The first 30 chapters of the Shabbat. ללמוד, תלמידים, לא לדבר.
ברשות מעלה דעתה, רב הגאון ראשי מעלות שליטה, ברשות רבנים נכבדים, כל קהל קדוש הזה, בני בנות ישראל. We're gathering here today to commemorate, to honor the memory of האדם הגדול והענקים שכל מלכי מזרח ומערב ומלכי רבנן נהנו מזיו תורתו, מי שהאיר פני תבל בתורתו, מי שאור תורתו זורחת לנצח. עטרת ראשנו ועוזנו, עמוד ההוראה בדורנו, שר התורה רבן של ישראל, מורנו ורבנו עובדיה יוסף בן בוג'יה, מנחתו האבן, זכר צדיק וקדוש לברכה, זכותו יגן עלינו. Right after the passing of Maran Zatzal, my son and Azkarah, our family, I have to say, I'm a Talmid of Maran for almost 43 years since I'm 15 years old. My family, I educated, Baruch Hashem, especially my boys, Zerachet Torato, Valichotav Shel Maran Zatzal. So my son, Rabbi Yisachar, said, we have to make a Siyum HaShas. I said, what is Siyum HaShas? So all these 60 Masechtot, you're going to finish in 30 days, how are you going to do that? It's impossible. Get people to do this? He said, look, it's Flatbush, you have plenty of Siyumim, you'll have Siyum HaShas, Mishnayot, all over in Israel for sure. Over here, you'll have plenty, don't worry, you'll be Mishtatef. You'll take a Masechet, and you'll be Mishtatef. No. He said, I don't know. He told his brothers, my son Bechia, other son Hakham Obadya, my other sons, and the Tumula Inyan, Miyad. I said, don't worry, what are you rushing? The clock is ticking, it's almost 30 days, you have to. No, they wanted to do it. Kipsu Adarim la Torah. And they did it. I said, what are you going to do? What's happening? They said, first we need some speakers. We need an English speaker. We know Maran. So we look at each other and said, who better to call than Ahava? Devoted Talmud of the Rab. Masulo, B'chol Yimei Nafsho. So my son, who knows his son Hakham Obadya, said, maybe your father can come to us, you say a few words to bring it to the root. I said, I'm sure he would. I'll ask him. But maybe we could be Mishatef Ula, maybe we could work together. You can supply the people learning the Shas, we'll supply the venue, and we can do something together. He said, Rabba, why not? It's the biggest kavod. Why not? It should be in Morenu Hakham Obadya, where the Rav was Tamid Davuk, V'halichotav Shel Rav, Shel Maran Zatzal. This is how this came about. Gemara says, there's a machloket in Sanhedrin about Yikra D'Shechvei, Yikra D'Chaye. If it's a kavod for the deceased, the hesped is a kavod for the deceased, or it's a kavod for the living. Of course, needless to say, in this case, it's not that Maran Zatzal needs our learning. It's a zchut for us to participate in whatever we learn. My son got so many people, Talmidei Chachamim, Bnei Torah, to learn, even Prakim, Daf Achad, all is Zichro Shel Olam. Needless to say, everything is needless to say here. It's just that we're here in some way, we have to commemorate it. And the best way, he always said, what is it, always on his mouth, always, and all the shiurim. חידוש גם א', גדול תלמוד שמביא במעשה, כי הם חיינו ברך גבינו. We had asked, my son did some phone calls, and he said, some Rabbanim said, we're doing tikkunim, ashkavot. That's great, that's the best, that's fun. What about siyumim v'shnayot? Siyumim limud. The Rav always said, limud, l'lamed, l'shmol, v'la'asot. And who more than him? Ga'on yud, ga'on b'limud, ga'on b'chesed, ga'on b'zikui rabim. Limud, l'lamed, l'shmol, v'la'asot. That's all he did. That's all he did. All he wanted. So this we can do. But what happened, I don't know, I have to say, I have to talk out of my heart, I'm very surprised. Ira Torah Lakewood, I don't hear anything. I heard some Hespedim. I have to say, it's Busha B'Cherpa for Ramadan. I don't understand it. People are scared to say that he was a Gadol Ador. Whether he was Vigad, we don't have Vigador. Mimadad Busha Alo Mayim En Mayim El Torah. I don't know, but you can't measure. But some people are scared to say, or I don't understand what's going on. I have no idea why people, there was hitrashlut. There was a hitrashlut. It's unbelievable. The least we could do is today or to spread the word who Maran was. People know, but they somehow, I don't know if they're scared, I don't know why they think like this. I have no idea. I have to say this. We only found Rav Aluf in New York State, at least. I'm not familiar with all of nationally. I know we asked Rav Daka from Chicago to speak with other close from it. Baruch Hashem, Rav Pinchas Zevichi, he did today on Azkarah. How is this? How is it that it's come about? I have no answer. ויתהלך חנוך את האלוהים ואיננו כי לקח אותו האלוהים. אמנם רש"י פירש בזה דבר אחר. ויתהלך חנוך, who was the Chanoch in our generation? Since he was small, maybe 9 years old, 8 years old, I don't know. Maran Zatzal was Chanoch. We all thought he's going to live forever. He's going to take us to Kat Mashiach Tzidkenu. ויתהלך חנוך. He went with Hashem. Since he was small. Veinenu. Why? It doesn't say Vayamon. He just took it. We have no reason. Amnam shekatuv Tera Ana Seba Tzaddik. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. What is for the door? But we have to go on further. Natati lecha mahalachim ben ha'avdim. We have to continue. But this is the least we can do this. Rabbeinu Amru, in Rosh Hashanah, it says, Shakur mitat tzadikim kisrefat beit Elokeinu. Past few weeks, we heard a lot of this. The death, the passing of tzadikim is like the burning of the Beit HaMikdash. There's a different nuskha, Midrash Echad, that says it's greater than the burning of the Beit HaMikdash. What's the difference? How do you reconcile these two? You could possibly reconcile. When the tzaddik passes, of course, it's like the Beit HaMikdash. He was a beacon of light for the world. Every Talmid Chacham. Al Tikre, Banayich El Bonai. He was Boneh. He was Zileach Or. Every Talmid Chacham. Beit HaMikdash, Rabbeinu Rabin was Nisraf. But Kedusha v'makom, Kedusha l'sha'atam, Kedusha la'atid lavo. But it doesn't emanate anything every day. It doesn't emanate. There's no Lishkat HaGazit, there's no Sanhedrin, there's nothing. There's nothing there. There's Mizgat. There's nothing there. Aval Talmid Chacham that leads a corpus of literature alone, only for the writings. Corpus of literature that Maran Zatzal wrote, the corpus of which will stay forever, before internet, before Osar Chokmah. Forever it stays. Everybody, all the Rabbanim, Gedolim, Gedolei Hador, take from him. Shu'avim Mayim, B'kol HaSfarim Shelo. Everybody. My son has a list of Shiloh Tshuva that plagiarized pages from him. Plagiarized. He didn't care. Okay, so you learn from me. But some people don't even mention him in this thing. Some people don't even mention him. Gedolim, Rabbanim Gedolim, they don't mention him. Yud Bet Yud Ayin, Bekoshi. I felt that my sons were right. This is the least minimum minimum שיכולים לעשות לזכרו. It says, Shami Shkalim says, אין עושים נפשות לצדיקים, דבריהם הם זכרם. You don't make, it said really matzevot, but it could be again sculptures. You don't do all types of sculptures after passing the tzaddik. אלא what? דבריהם הם זכרונם. Their words are memory. And his words will stay on forever. They're going to say, oh, Yatzab Kochad Etera. So that's the reason he wasn't any more than any less than anybody else. You have a unique personality. In centuries, your own in writing and in Zikui Rabin, B'chol Ever Upinah, he went to be Medinat Chumash. He said stories to people. Now, the Rabbanim here knew him personally better than I did, they can tell you. And there will be books and Sfarim on him forever. Forever. When I said, it said, Agura B'olcha Olamin. David HaMelech said, he asked him, he said, I would like to live in your tent forever. But I asked, how is it possible? Is it possible to live when you pass away? It's gone. But of course, if you live on, because you left Tehillim, we say Tehillim every day. Everybody says Tehillim. David HaMelech lives on forever. Maza Obachayim Ubachayim. It says in Sefer Ta'ani, Yaakov Avinu lo met. No, he says, Maza Obachayim Ubachayim. Who is Zaro? We are Zaro. And we are Zaro, Marat Zatzara. We are Zaro. All those who learn his Torah, who give the Torah, sing Kavod Nishmato. What is Kavod Nishmato? ללמוד ללמד לשאוב לעשות. קריאת לתורה. Whatever is minimum, 4 hours, 2 hours, or 15 minutes, doesn't make a difference. That's what all he wanted. All his life, one gallon of Torah. How about Chaim Abi? When it says, I said the name of Shimon Yochai, or Yochanan said the name of Shimon Yochai. He said, מכאן, אומר שמועה, מפיו, שתמיד חכם בעולם הזה, ספרות עוקבת, שנאמר, ובין ספרי שני. מה זה mean בעולם הזה? בעולם הזה. It's as if he's learning now. Or we know, במתים חופשי, כיוון שאדם מת, נעשה חופשי מן המצוות. There's no limit to Torah. You finish, whatever you do here, upstairs is gone. No, if you learn, if you say Shema Mipiv, and you mention his name, you say you took it from Yavi Omer, or Yechavada, and you say you took it, you say Shema Mipiv, it's as if he learned, and he has Zechut. He has Zechuyot upstairs. And then he's Melitz Yosef. Yosef Hu HaShalim. Hu HaMelitz B'nenu B'ezrat Hashem. Hu HaMelitz B'nenu. Amenu. יהיה מליץ יושר עלינו. בעזרת השם, בזכות זה. כולנו, כולל המשתתפים, צריכים להסכים את השם של
אורי ניגע,
שיכין את האוכל. גם זכות גדולה נפלה בידכם. ברוך השם, כל אלה שמשתתפים בוועדה, כל אלה שתפתו אפילו, לא למדו עכשיו, בעזרת השם ידעו לשנה הבאה. בעזרת השם, יעלה עלינו, יח ממרום. מרן זצ"ל השתתף בזה, הוא רואה מה שקורה פה. אחים בהספדה, דהתם כאימנה. One Amara said to another Amara, he said, warm us up with the hesped. We warm up with the hesped because I'm there. Da'atam kaimna. There is a simcha today because simcha siyum hashas bavli. We took siyumim. And she says in the Mishnah. Two siyumim. And the siyumim, what does that mean? That the same shas. השם שניאל, בעזרת השם, מרן זצ"ל, גם נזכור בעדנו. באמת, כולם, מכל הקדוש הזה, כל הקדוש הזה, כל המשתתפים, וכל המסיימים, יזכו, באורך ימים, שעות חיים, עלו תגופה לעולם עלייה, בעזרת השם, we should be זוכר תמיד, always, to make some שמחות like this to see משס לכבודו, even though it's a שמחה מגולה ותודה, בעזרת השם, he sees it, and we should always זוכר, ושיר ספקים מהר במהר אמן. I'd like to introduce first, Rabbi Mordechai ושמעון אלוף, to be מסיים בש"ס, and say the Kaddish, and say if you were to leave her. I'd like to ask, like I said before, and I would honor to say a few words on the Talmidim Hamurakim של מרן זצ"ל, on the greatest תלמידי חכמים מירושלים, מחבר ספרים פשוט עטרת פז ושאר ספרים, to say a few דברי התעוררות לזכרו של הרב.
כבוד הרב הגאון, רב אלוף שליטה, כבוד הרבנים, השם ישמור אותם ויחיה אותם, בעזרת השם ברך, תברכו פילון, כל הקלטר של זה, שתברכו פילון. דבר קטן, שראינו פרשה, אנחנו קוראים כאן בפרשה, אצל לאה, שהיא ילדה את יהודה, כתוב, הפעם עודד השם ותעמוד מלדת. זאת אומרת, אומר לרותנו, למה לאה הפסיקה ללדת? מכיוון שהעניין הזה שהיא הודתה להשם, זה לא מספיק להודות להשם, אלא צריך שאדם תמיד יודה, יבקש גם כן להשם בה. להודות על העבר ולבקש על העתיד. ובאמת, העניין הזה שאדם צריך לבקש על העתיד, באמת אנחנו רואים את זה בגמרא, במסכת, מה שגמרא מספר במסכת קידושין בדף כ"ט עמוד א'. הגמרא מספרת שמה, הגמרא אומר, רב אחבה רב אביה, שרצה לבוא ללמוד תורה אצל אביי, עליו השלום, הוא הגיע לשם, לעירו של אביי, אביי אמר, אף אחד שלא ייתן לו לישון. בקיצור הדבר, העניין, הלך שם רב אחבה רב אביה, וישב שם בבית המדרש. הגיע שם לבית המדרש, הגיע לשם מזיק גדול, שהיה בר 7 ראשים. רב אחבה רב אביה, כל תפילה שהתפלל, הוריד לו ראש. התפלל, הוריד לו ראש. אחרי זה בסופו של דבר, בבוקר השכם, שהגיע שם אביי, אמר לו, תשמע, אתה עשית לנו ניסים. אם לא יקבל לי ניסים, לא הייתי ניצל. באמת שואלים לרבותינו, איך אביי נתן לו ככה לישון בכזה מקום שזה סכנה נפשות היה. אלא מתרץ רבי מרשה דבר עצום, אומר רבי מרשה, לא, הנה בלי תפילה באמת אדם אסור לדור במקום שנעשה לו נס. אבל עם תפילה, אדם יכול להתפלל. זאת אומרת, אתם רואים כאן את הכוח של התפילה, עד כמה היא גדולה ועד כמה היא עצומה. שברכום בינו, באמת על המורנו ורבנו הקדושנו, אי אפשר לדבר. הגמרא אומרת, הכיני מתייספדי, דת המקיים, מה שאומרים בסדר שבת, דת ק"ג, הגמרא שם אומרת, כן, הכיני מתייספדי דת המקיים. זאת אומרת, אנחנו רואים את העניין הזה, תברכו כאילו אמרתי, אבל בכל זאת העניין שאנחנו רואים כאן, שבוודאי, אין צל של ספק, של כל אדם שלמד בלימוד הזה, וכל אדם שילמד בלימוד הזה, בלימוד שאדם לומד לעילוי נשמתו של הרב, בוודאי שהוא זוכה להגיע בעזרת השם לכל הדברים, בכל העניינים, כולם, אמן תברכו פתאום, הכל מכל כל, אמן תהי רצון.
two people in North America, like I said before, who were the devoted Talmidim of the Rav Aluf, and I have a brother-in-law in Chicago who mentioned I never met him. I have one of Daniel Lakach, who was a close Talmud of the Rav, and we invited him to say a few words.
ברשות אמרת הרב אלוף שליטה, ברשות הידידי, למדנו יחד בחזון עובדיה לפני שנים רבות, הרב זביחי, ברשות כל הרבנים, ברשות הקהל הקדוש הזה. I recently had to make a calculation that I felt I never would ever have to make. I always thought the Rav would live forever. So I made a calculation, how long did I know the Rav? Not as a figure in the horizon, but a figure that I had a relationship with. The number is 34. 34 years. 34 years I had a merit not simply to know him, to ask him questions, to learn from him, to learn from his writings, to learn from his actions. 34 years of love, of devotion, of awe and appreciation. I can speak about him for weeks. I can speak about him for weeks, not about things that I read, not about things that I heard, but about things that I saw. And I'm conflicted. What am I going to tell you? What am I going to speak to you about? There's so much to say. There's no way. It's like trying to explain what the sun is like in the sky at midday. Should I speak to you about his love of Torah, which permeated his every fiber? Should I talk to you about his genius? Should I speak to you about his encyclopedic knowledge? Should I speak to you about his depth of understanding? His diligence in Torah study? His unfailing ability to identify the root issue of any question? His decisiveness? His clarity in halakha? His effort to find leniency when possible? His drive to answer even the most complicated of questions? His courage in halakha? Fearlessness? His tenacity? His commitment? His loyalty? Should I speak to you about his yirat shamayim? Should I speak to you about his exactingness in the performance of mitzvot? Should I speak to you about his love for every Jew? How about his ability to connect to every kind of person? Should I speak to you about his struggles, his own personal struggles to arrive at the level that he arrived? Should I speak to you about his conscientiousness, his kindness, his compassion? Should I speak to you about his surpassing humility, although he was a giant eclipsing all of those around him? Should I speak to you about his profound sense of responsibility? Should I speak to you about his regal comportment, his multifaceted talents, his articulateness and accomplishment as a speaker? How about his amazing ability as a writer? Should I speak to you about his stellar teaching ability to teach one and all? How about his achievement of rekindling Sephardic pride, his revolution and rebirth of Torah ascendance? Should I speak to you about the fact that he returned tens of thousands of people b'tshuva? Should I speak to you about his leadership? How about his vision? His lifetime mission of lahachazir atara liyoshna, to return the original luster to the crown. His unending effort to have every Jewish child receive a Torah education. And on and on and on. I experienced every one of these and many more. But the one that I feel most personally connected to is the one that I experienced for 34 years. His unfailing commitment to encourage young men to learn and grow. Indeed, the first time I came to see him as a young post-high school boy, I walked into his office in Yerushalayim, and this is what he said to me, quote, "Ata rotze liot karov elai, ve'ani rotze liot karov elecha." You want to be close to me, and I want to be close to you. A little American kid. I want to be close to you. And it wasn't lip service. For the next 34 years, he never wavered from that statement. My friends, something extraordinary has happened. To use a word which is overly used, but truly appropriate, really something historic has happened. We have an obligation to understand it. Because our children are going to ask us, and our grandchildren are going to ask us, weren't you alive then? Didn't you see that? There were 850,000 people at his funeral. I'll make a simple calculation. This doesn't require a lot of math. The Jewish population in Israel in September of 2013, 6,066,000. 850,000 is 14% of the entire Jewish population. 14% of the population attended the Rav's funeral. Now, compare that to the United States. Population of the United States, 316,959,000. 14% of that is 44 plus million. Can you imagine if 44 million people moved in a moment's notice? It's unheard of. It never would happen. It never would happen, no matter what. And remember, children didn't go. Most women stayed home. And you should know more than that. There were 200,000 people in transit because the entire transportation system rapidly, completely shut down. There were 200,000 people waiting for buses that will never come and for trains that would never leave. I can tell you with total knowledge that the police begged the family, they begged them, do not, under any condition, delay the funeral. Not even by an hour or two. They made a simple calculation. If they were delayed 2 hours, people in France, people in Europe would charter planes. And then it wouldn't just be Yerushalayim that would shut down. The entire country would shut down. They begged them. Pikuach nefesh, they said to them. The amazing thing is that these 14% of the Jewish population in the state of Israel moved in 4.5 hours. So you know what happened the next day? The very next day, and I know this with total knowledge, the very next day, the Israeli traffic police gathered their geniuses. And they said to them, if we ever had to duplicate this again, how would we do it? How can we move 14% of the population? If we had to, how can we do it? I mean, it happened. We saw it yesterday. If we wanted to do it again, what would we need to do? After consulting and thinking and brainstorming, they raised their hands in defeat. They had no idea how it happened. It was inconceivable. It has never happened before, and my friends, it will most likely never happen again. So you'll tell me, okay, what was the big deal? It was the Sephardic faithful. It was our brothers that were there, Sephardic faithful. It's not true. Ashkenazim, Hasidim, Sephardim, it didn't make any difference. They were all there. There was no village, there was no kibbutz, there was no moshav, there was no city that did not have representation. The large religious communities were ghost towns by the population's movement. So you say to me, well, it was a one-time show. But it's not true. The effect was so massive. I'll share with you a story that I heard from Reuven Elbaz. On the last night of the Shiva, I stood in the streets of Yerushalayim with 200,000 people. It was not an easy night. It was very hot. We stood for 4.5 hours, 200,000 of us. And I heard Reuven Elbaz say the following. He said that a young man in his yeshiva came up to him during the Shiva and said, Rebbe, I need to do something for the Rav. My soul is aching. I have to do something for the Rav. What do I do? Tell me something to do. Should I go say the whole Sefer Tehillim by his name? What do I do? The Rav looked at this man. He knew this man. This man had come from, he was about Teshuvah, come from a place, from a school, where not only was it secular, but it was the secular of secular. It was so secular that the director of the school would not allow any more than one mezuzah in the entire building. One mezuzah on the front door, that's it. They said the front door's enough, we don't need any more than that. Reuven Elbaz looked at this fellow and said, you know, every year we send out, around the Yamim Noraim, we send out Avrechim, we send out some of our young men to speak about the high holidays in the non-religious schools. Just to speak about the holidays. And in every single school, our young men are received with warmth and with interest, except one. In this particular school, the non-mezuzah secular school, they are not allowed to walk through the door. Not at all. They're not allowed to walk through the door. And they're told, we are going to teach our children, and you're never going to teach our children. So the Rav looked at this young man and said, you know what I want you to do? I want you to go to your alma mater. I want you to go to this non-mezuzah secular school, and talk to them about the Rav. The guy, I gotta give him credit, he has courage. He went. He gets to the front door and there's a guard outside. The guard sees him and says, Mi ata lama bata? Tavi tudat zehut. Who are you? Why are you here? So he said, I came to speak about Maran. As soon as the guard heard that, he said, B'aksha tikanes, ima bata leMaran, b'aksha. That only got him through the door. Now he has to speak to the director. He walks up to the director, who's actually a woman. She sees him and she goes, oh, so happy you came. This is a change. She says to him, I want you to know, we have dedicated this entire week, Shavua Shel Maran. The entire week is dedicated as a memorial for the Rav, the non-mezuzah secular school. And she produced a pamphlet that they had printed. And Reuven Amos was reading from it. He was reading from it. I saw it in his hands. He was reading from it. And what did it say? It was a biography of the Rav that if it had been written by a Talmid in Yeshivat Hakham Obadya, it would have been exactly the same. There were no exaggerations. There were no cutting, biting, acerbic words. It was all true. It was all positive. It was all good. How does a man accomplish that? How do you break barriers that nobody can break? How do you do that? So you tell me that was enough, it stopped after the Shiva, but it's not true. There are continuing strange things that are occurring. Did you know that daily men are making their way to the kever with a minyan to ask for mechila, to ask for forgiveness? People who in the past may have maligned the Rav, spoken ill of him, made demeaning remarks about him, are now coming with a minyan to ask for mechila. Talmidei Chachamim, standing barefoot at the kever of the to ask for mechila, to ask for forgiveness. How does one accomplish this? How does one arrive at this level? So as I mentioned to you, when I stood that last night of the Shiva with 200,000 people, I heard the Klosenberger Rebbe say as follows. He mentioned the Gemara writes, Ein Nevi'im hen, B'nei Nevi'im hen. If they're not themselves prophets, but the Jews have a prophetic aspect about them. I maybe would have mentioned the Gemara Megillah, which says, the inu lachazu, mazalayu chazu. Sometimes if a person doesn't see something with their physical eyes, but their soul can sense it. There was something that happened with the loss of the Rav that touched every Jew everywhere, without any exception. Some people felt it more profoundly, some felt it less, but everybody felt it. What does that mean? What was it about the Rav that made him capable of touching every single person? What was it? So I'm going to just an idea, just a small idea, because as Mr. Hoffman and the family have done such a tremendous job in creating this ma'amad along with the Aluf family, such a tremendous ma'amad, such a tremendous event. As Mr. Hoffman mentioned, they'll be writing things about the Rav forever. There's no limit. There's no way to encapsulate that man. He was larger than life. I will use two words, Torah Chesed, and let me explain. When you speak about Torah and the Rav, you're speaking about his very, very life. You've heard the stories. I won't bore you with repeating the same ones you've heard. Maybe I'll try to share a few that you may not have heard. To the Rav, learning was everything. It was the very breath that he took that kept him alive. If you took Torah away from him, there was nothing. He couldn't survive without it. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. When he would focus, it was total. I can't tell you how many times he would call me. And Hakham Obadya, Rabbi Speaker can tell you, the Rav at that time in the Kollel, his office was in the yeshiva, in the Kollel. So from the office to the Beit Midrash is maybe 30 yards, maybe. How long does it take somebody to go from the office to the Kollel and bring me back? 30 seconds, 40 seconds, maybe. So the Rav calls me, I go, I come. Of course, in the meantime, in those 30, 40 seconds, what do you think he's going to do? Twiddle his thumbs? What do you think he's going to do? He starts to learn. The problem is, once he puts his face in the book, he's not here anymore. I can't tell you how many times I would stand there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I would never chas v'shalom disturb him. I had to wait until he looked up. And sometimes it didn't happen for a while. He would call me. He would tell me to sit down next to me. And his mind was preoccupied with Torah. It was the Rav. So I'll tell you a story that you may or may not know. The story goes that when in his youth, he learned in, I think it was Musayaf, he literally didn't have what to eat. And there was a woman who had mercy upon him. And she would bring him lunch every day. One day she noticed that the plate was not just empty, but the plate was licked clean. She said that I must be hungry, so the next day she put more food. And she noticed again the plate was licked clean. She said, strange. He doesn't seem like a fellow with an appetite. He's always got his head in the book. She put more food, and again it was licked clean. She said, something's going on. The next day she brought the plate. She placed it in front of the Rav. The Rav never saw her come. The Rav never saw her go. He never knew she was there. She put the plate down and walked away. And on cue, through the open window, an army of cats descended upon the plate. In milliseconds, the plate was completely cleaned. She realized, of course, that not only did the Rav not see her, not see the cats, he didn't eat. And this wasn't one day, it wasn't 2 days. This was a Rav. He didn't know about food, he didn't know about sleeping. Once his mind became preoccupied with something, it was over. Even in his late 80s, this was a man who 2 nights a week would not close his eyes and stay up all night learning. I read this from Tzvi Chakak himself. Sometimes 3 nights a week. If we don't get our beauty sleep, we all know what we're like. To have 2 nights a week minimum, sometimes 3, deep in his 80s, he would be up learning Torah. The neighbors would say that the lights almost never seemed to go out in his house. They were constantly on. But his love of Torah was so much that for him it was literally life itself. I can tell you at one time, he was here in New York. It was actually the last time I think I met him here in New York. So I had the zchut to eat with him breakfast. We were eating in a room that had a lot of svarim in them. A lot of books. But it was evident that the books weren't being very well used. And the Rav painfully looked at the books, and this is what he said to me. Miskenim ha-svarim ha'elu, mi yilmad bahem. Poor svarim, poor books, who's going to learn that? The Rav heard from the books, because he knew that books had to be printed to be learned. And learn he did. You've seen the pictures of his house, 20,000, 30,000, nobody knows how many svarim. But he knew that. His knowledge was total. I can't tell you what it was like to sit in front of him. You were prepared for a week. You'd come to talk to him about a subject. You thought you had it down pat. And you would start to talk to him, and all of a sudden you realize that everything you knew, he knows. And things that you never even dreamed about, he's got in his pocket, but he never made you feel small. He never made you feel irrelevant. He never made you feel bad. He'd sit there and listen to you patiently, as if you had what to tell him. And then you would ask your question, and he'd tell you, sorry, visit this place. Have you seen this sefer? Have you ever heard of it? Oh, it's over there. Let me get it for you. I'll present for you. Here's your information. That resolves the problem. Okay. And time and time and time again. This was the Rav was limitless. I had the zchut for a period of time. I had the zchut to buy the Rav svarim. I would bring him a list of the newly printed books, and he would look at them, and he would tell me this one. And the exchanges were just priceless. I'll give you an example, just to show you the all-encompassing knowledge. I brought on the list was a book called Nachal Eitan. It's a commentary on the Rambam. Rav looked at it, turned to me, and said, "Does it go past Perik Yud Gimel and Hilchot Shchita?" In other words, the Rav didn't just know the contents of the books; he knew everything about them, how far they went, what was in them. So he said, "Does it go past Perik Yud Gimel? Is there something new in this particular volume?" What do I know? I just saw the sefer on the shelf. I said, "I don't think so. I think it's just a copy of the previous one." He goes, "Okay, I have that one." I went home and I checked. Nachal Eitan. Perik Yud Gimel, Hilchot Shchita, that's how far it goes. He didn't say it condescendingly. He didn't say it in any way pretentiously. He just needed information. Does it go past Perik Yud Gimel? If it does, I'm interested. If not, I already have it. So the love was so encompassing. Let me tell you, I once brought him from the Gaon Chida a sefer called Chadrei Batim. It was newly printed. And the Rav picked up the sefer. And he started to flip through the sefer. He said to me, "Kam ma'asacha lichtov." He kept repeating, "Kam ma'asacha lichtov." The Gaon Chida printed in his lifetime, and altogether over 70 books he wrote. Kam ma'asacha lichtov. And now, as Baruch Hashem, the 6th volume of Shabbat has come out, but I think it's his 56th sefer. We can now say about the Rav himself, "Kam ma'asacha lichtov." Kam ma'asacha lichtov. There's more. I myself have seen a shelf and a half of Kitav Yad ready to go. A shelf and a half, and there's more. Kam ma'asacha lichtov. Who is like this person? Who is like this person? Now, there's a beautiful story which brought to many, many places. I think the earliest place is in the Marat or Zarua. I think it's the earliest place. There's a story that goes as follows. There was a Talmid Chacham, there was a great scholar. There was a great scholar who spent most of his days learning one Masechet, one particular volume of Shas. It's called Masechet Chagigah. And he learned it, and he reviewed it, and he reviewed it, and he reviewed it, and he had Chidushim, he had new ideas on this Masechet, and again, and again, and again, he reviewed this particular Masechet. And one day when he died, a woman was in the room. And she went out and she said to people, you have to come and you have to give honor to this man. This man who learned Masechet Chagigah, you have to come and give him honor. You have to make sure that you make a eulogy about him. You have to make sure there's an appropriate levaya for him. And people followed what this woman said, and they came and they eulogized him, and they said Hespedim, and they accompanied him to his place. And finally, along the way, they said, who are you? Are you his wife? Are you his daughter? How are you related to this man? So she said, no. I am Masechet Chagigah. I have come to cry for this man because who is going to learn me now? Who is going to learn me like this man learned me? Spent day and night, year after year reviewing me. Who is going to learn me now? I have to cry for him. My friends, 850,000 people were at that funeral. Who knows how many Sfarim were standing there as well? You think anybody learns the Sfarim like the Rav learned the Sfarim? And you gotta be kidding. He didn't learn them. He didn't just open a sefer at random and learn a couple pages. Cover to cover, introductions. He read Mafdechot indexes. He read addendums. He read everything. I can't tell you how many stories there are about this. When he quotes Sfarim, he doesn't quote only what's in the middle, the main texts. He quotes everything. In the back of this sefer, there's an extra page over there. On the bottom of the page, it says this. And they blame, I just saw the new sefer. He quotes, there's a tshuva before Siman Aleph, before number 1, there's a tshuva, there it's written. How many of those people standing there must have been these Sfarim who were crying? Who's going to open them? Yeah, we have computer programs, and some fellow may one day find one page on one of these Sfarim. Nobody reads them. Who reads them cover to cover? Who? Halavai would have to be coming like that. 20,000 Sfarim? I could go on forever about the depth of his knowledge, because people don't realize the depth of his knowledge, but I have very limited time. You would think that the man's Torah was private. It was his own. It was far from the truth. Yeah, he had goals. He was very, very driven to achieve his goals in learning. His Torah was never private. Never. His Torah was the Torah of the people. From the earliest days of his life, his Torah was the Torah of the Jewish people. Lilmod ulilamed. For the Rav, they were not separate entities to teach and to learn. Learning and teaching for the Rav were not separate. They were one and the same. His learning and his teaching, he learned in order to teach. That was his everything. For the Rav, it became not merely an act of teaching, it was chesed itself, it was kindness. Because the only thing, my friends, that could separate the Rav from his Sfarim was the Jewish people. That's it. If somebody needed help, if he had to teach a shiur, he'd stop. Barring that, there was nothing. He knew nothing. And you have no idea his disconnection from the world. I just saw a video where his grandson says, in the middle of the night, sometimes he would be perturbed. He wanted to add a single sentence to something until he broke that single sentence into the newest tshuva. He couldn't rest. So he'd make his way to the study. This man who knew every single Tosfot and Shas and every single Rishon, he knew everything backwards and forwards, but he didn't know exactly which switch turned on which lights. Not because he couldn't. He just made a calculated choice. Why should I remember that in place of something that is more valuable to me? Such was the love of the Torah of the Rav. He would give that up for one reason alone, in order to teach the Jewish people. And then he did this in 3 ways. At least. There are others, but at least 3. Number 1 is Sfarim. The Sfarim, he didn't simply write books. There are a lot of writers. He created an entire halachic rubric, an entire halachic codex. If people have already studied it, more will. People will recognize this achievement. It was not simply wrote a lot. There was purpose and there was structure in his writing. It's staggering. For those who have studied it and understand it, it's staggering. Do you know that Tehillim, the book of Tehillim, is divided into pieces that can be read? Some people read the entire Tehillim over the course of a week. Most of us can't read that much. Most of us try to do it over the course of 30 days, over the course of a month. If you look at the Tehillim, you'll see 13th day of the month, 15th day of the month, 12th day of the month. The Rav died on the 3rd day of Mar Cheshvan. Do you know which Tehillim in the 30-day division is in the 3rd day of the month? It's Mizmor Yod Tet. And you know what it says in Mizmor Yod Tet? Yom le'yom yabiya omer. V'layla le'layla yachavedat. The Rav's magnum opus as well as the secondary Sefer Yachavedat are mentioned in that pasuk. On that day, the day where the Rav passed away, thousands and tens of thousands of Jews in their particular reading of the divisions of the Tehillim said that pasuk almost as if it was a stamp from heaven itself, that the Rav's Sfarim would live forever. He answered questions. He didn't just answer some questions. He answered questions from all over. A friend of mine who worked with us, whether I was speaking myself or Yuranaki, has already printed over 12 volumes of questions that were asked to the Rav. And more and more. The Rav answered all the time. And was there ever something that he shied away from? No. The hardest questions came to him. I want to share with you a story that is not in the books, because it's one I saw. So when I was learning the Hakham Obadya, I had to scoot one day to hold the Rav's appointment book. At that time, he was writing Ta'arat Habayit Chelik Bet. And this is what the appointment book read like. On this and this day, I wrote the Ta'arat Habayit from this page to that page. On this and this day, I wrote the Ta'arat Habayit from this page to that page. That was entry after entry after entry until one day. It says as follows. Amati b'lechtov Ta'arat Habayit. I had to stop. Why? He said, I received a question from London. Apparently a young boy, Yarei Shamayim Ben Torah, an issue, he was already engaged, getting ready to get married, and an issue arose regarding his yichus. Potentially Chalil V'chas, he would not be able to get married, or potentially a mamzer, Chalil V'chas. So the Rav put aside, in the love of his life, he put aside writing the Sefer Ta'arat Habayit. And he investigated to see if there was a way to make this boy's life livable. Is there a way in which he could find a heter to allow this boy to get married? How long would you give up of your time, of your energy, and of your interests on behalf of somebody else? A day? 2 days? 3 days. After 3 days, you did what you could, right? For 3 days you thought about it, you came out, couldn't find something. 4 days? How about a week? When would you finally say, I tried, and I can't? You know, sometimes the answer is no. 2 weeks. 2 weeks, that's what I calculate of entries. The final entry says, Baruch Hashem, Masati lo heter. What was the next entry? On this day I wrote the Ta'arat Habayit from this page to this page. And the next entry, on this day I wrote the Ta'arat Habayit from this page to that page. Who does that? Think about 2 weeks, and you should know. 2 weeks of the Rav's thinking, immeasurable. 20 minutes of the Rav's thinking is incomprehensible. 2 weeks, do you know how many times Shas must have gone through his head trying to find a way to allow this? 2 weeks. B'nei Ibrahim. Ahava Yisrael, the love that you have for the Jewish people. It's incomprehensible. The Rav was already teaching Shilvim. 17. My friends, calculate that. How many world-class poskim do you know? World-class poskim that for 75 plus years give of their time to teach every strata of Jewish society. Not just the Geonim, not just the super geniuses, not just the Avraham and Kola who maybe will be able to understand what he's talking about. Every level, simple people, non-religious people, it didn't make a difference who they were. If the Rav could teach them, he would, and he didn't stop. The first day I got to Kollel in Hakham Obadya, the Rav came. First day, he sits down and he says, my friends, the Midrash says that why did the story of Pilegesh B'Giva occur? This terrible tragedy that happened? Because that the rabbis didn't go from place to place to place to place to teach Torah. You guys can't do this. You guys have to go from place to place. And you have to teach and you have to teach. I looked at myself and I said, oh my gosh, I just got here. Now I gotta start walking around. But that was the Rav. And he wasn't just lip service, right? It wasn't just words. He meant it. How many times he would come over at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, he'd go from one place to another place, 10 places, 15 places in one night. How many times did it occur? But this was him. There was a case which happened here in New York. When I was learning Hakham Obadya, he flew to America. Rabbi Yitzhak, Rosh Kollel. who was now the chief rabbi of Israel, told me the story himself. He said, we got on the plane, an American Airlines plane, we were supposed to go to LA. There was engine trouble, that's a story to itself. There was engine trouble, the plane had to turn around and come back to New York and landed. So, the Rav gets picked up from the airport, he calls somebody to come and get him, comes to the house. Now listen, he's an old man. Nobody knows you're there, right? You're supposed to be in LA. What would you do? Take a safer out, you sit down and you learn. You have a few minutes, nobody's bothering you, nobody knows you're there. Wouldn't you do that? No, no, no. What does the Rav say? The Rav says, please arrange shubim, schools, shuls, yeshivot. I don't care, you set it up, I'm going, I'm here. Why am I here if not to teach? This was the Rav. His love of the Jewish people was incomprehensible. Incomprehensible. From his 17 years old, he taught and he taught and he taught. You don't think people feel when you teach them with love? The love that would pour from the Rav is indescribable. For those who are zochim to be close to him, but it's nothing if you were zochim to be close to the Rav all the time. He was involved in your life. He cared about you. He'd ask about you. He'd ask about your actions. He'd ask about your children. The love that flowed from him was just almost superhuman. It was almost indescribable. But let me tell you a story that I experienced, just to put this a little bit in focus. So part of my job was to be a little bit of a translator. So one time there was a man who came to speak to the Rav. He only spoke English. The Rav didn't speak English. So I was asked to translate. So I'm in the room with the Rav and this man. And the man had a question to ask the Rav that was crushing to him. It involved a child that had veered off the path, and the man was broken. The man was broken. So he's talking to me, I'm talking to the Rav. So whatever the Rav is getting, he's getting through a filter. And the man's telling me the question, and I'm filtering it to the Rav, and at one point the man breaks down. The man breaks down, he starts crying. It's just overwhelming to him. What happens? I'm in the room. The Rav starts to cry. I'm not talking about a tear. I'm talking about the two of them sitting there crying, convulsing and crying. I felt so awkward. I'm the only guy in the room not crying. They're crying, and they're crying, and they're crying. Finally, the Rav hears a question. He did something he never did again with me. I can't recall him doing this a second time. He said to me, I'm going to repeat the question. I said, well, you don't trust me. I've done this before. I'm here trying, what do you mean? But then I understood. I thought about it and I understood. The man was going to hear an answer he didn't want to hear. The Rav wanted to be 100% certain that if he was answering a question with an answer that the man didn't want to hear, that he got the question right. So he says to me, ask him, make sure that that's the question. So I said to the man, this is what the Rav's going to answer. Is this the question? The man says, that's the question. So the Rav tells me, if that's the case, this is the halakha. Total clarity, absolute clarity, total clarity. Just one point about clarity, I have to tell you this. I had a Rebbe, his name was Moshe Hershel, a famous Gaon, Ashkenazi. And he once told me about the Rav. He said, you know what, I know the Bikut, and I know the you, and I know all of that. But you know what makes most striking to me about the Rav? You know, when a person has a lot of knowledge, a lot of these Bikutim, they get confused. They have a lot of information. Imagine for a moment, my friends, if you scanned into your brain 10,000 books, what do you think your brain would look like? Maybe you wouldn't know what you'd be completely buffaloed. You wouldn't know what was going on. The Rav had everything was cataloged, everything was collated, everything was categorized. It was staggering. He said the greatest thing about the Rav is his clarity. Let me tell you something that people may not know. There's a book called Kol Sinai, which is probably the original writings of the Rav in halakha, in presentation to the people as a whole. And I was told when I learned the Hakham Obadya, some people couldn't believe that the Rav wrote these the night before they were printed. The printer would come and say, I'm going to press tomorrow, I need what you got. And the Rav would write it on the spot. Anybody who looks at these, even 50 years later, is mesmerized by the clarity of the man. It's just amazing, done in total clarity. So at this hesped, I heard Rav Baruch Mordechai Ezrahi say that by Aaron the pasuk says, "Vayiru kol ha'ida ki gava Aaron." The entire congregation saw that Aaron had passed. Vayivku et Aaron sheloshim yom kol bet Israel. The entirety of the Jewish people cried for Aaron for 30 days. You know what's interesting now? It doesn't say that by Moshe Rabbeinu. By Moshe Rabbeinu it says, "Vayivku b'nei Israel." Et Moshe ve'avot Moav 30 yom vayitemu yemei Evel Moshe. Vayitemu yemei bechi Evel Moshe. It doesn't say Kol Beit Israel, the entire Jewish people. It says Bnei Israel, the Jewish people. Why by Aaron? Does it say all? So he said, because the Jewish people loved Ahava. Not that they didn't love Moshe, but Ahava was the one they went to for problems. Ahava was the one who talked to them. Ahava was the one to make peace amongst them. For him, Kol Bet Israel, there wasn't a single Jewish person who didn't cry. And at that moment he said, my friends, Hakham Obadya was the Avon. The love of the Hakham Obadya that he displayed, that he gave to every single Jew was so amazing, so complete, that there was nothing that people wouldn't do for the Rav. And just in conclusion, the Rav himself brings the following mashal. The Rav brings the mashal, was an emperor that was attacked constantly by rebels and all sorts of people that were making his life difficult. And each time the emperor would have to go to battle, there was one particular king from amongst his vassals, a warrior king, somebody fabulous. And this king would gather his army and come to join the emperor, and every time this warrior king would turn the tide. No matter how many armies were there, this warrior king would turn the tide. Well, the rebels finally got the idea that if they wanted to take out the emperor, why bother with the emperor? Go straight to the warrior king. Just attack him alone. Once they got him out of the way, they were safe. So indeed, they gathered the largest army they could, and they went against the warrior king, not against the emperor. So immediately, the people of the warrior king's city sent a letter to the emperor, please send your armies, we're being attacked. What did the king do? What did the emperor do? The emperor went and he took the warrior king and brought him to him. They left the city by itself. So they came to the emperor and they said, Emperor, what are you doing? Not only don't you send us an army, but worse than that, you take away the warrior king, what are you doing? So the emperor said, you've become too dependent on him. I think you can win the battles on your own. You've become too dependent on him. You need to learn that you can do it too. Well, they had no choice. The warrior king wasn't with them anymore. So they gathered their armies and eventually vanquished. They were successful. So said the Rav, sometimes, even in the midst of a battle, takes away the warrior king, the one who was always there. In this case, it's the Rav. He's the one that we always went to. No matter what the situation, he was always there and he always took care of everything. He made everything go away. But maybe we relied on him too much. Maybe, what's the big deal? Pick up the phone, call Yerushalayim. I can't tell you every time at 3 o'clock in the morning I was calling Yerushalayim. Can't tell you every time. Maybe it's now some kind of indication from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we need to work on it ourselves. Indeed, the Kabbalim tell us that closer to the time of the P'tirah, the more a person is available to take some of the character, some of the uniqueness of the person. We're close to the time of the P'tirah of the Rav. Maybe we, each and every one of us, can learn to try to grasp some of that uniqueness. We certainly can't reproduce him. That's not possible. We certainly cannot, in some way, compare to him, but we can try to take a little bit, devote ourselves to something a little bit special, a little bit different, a little bit more. So that Bezrat Hashem, when Bezrat Hashem Mishim Sekin will come to where once again reunited with the Rav, will Bezrat Hashem be able to be Mekabel Panav B'Simcha Bezrat Hashem. And we only know Simchot Bezrat Hashem. Once again, a tremendous honor to be able to be Mishtatef in this tremendous honor.
I'd like to call upon Rabbi Morenu Hakham to say a few words. It's going to be in Hebrew. One of Talmidei Muvakim Shel Harav to say a few words to Leo Torah.
לכבוד אמר דאחווה, המוראים הגאונים, קודם כל חייב להדגיש שלא יהיה ספק, אני בכל אופן לא לומר פה דברי הספד, אני לא יכול להספיד, אסור לנו להספיד, לי בכל אופן אסור להספיד. חכם עובדיה עליו השלום, זו לא דמות שיש בדור הזה, לפי אני דעתי, מי שתקרא יכול או ראוי להספיד אותו. מי שצריך היה להספיד אותו, זה הגאון בעזרא עתיר. הוא אמר עליו שאם לא קמה ישיבת פורת יוסף בשביל להעמיד אותו דיין, הוא זה שצריך להספיד אותו. הגאון הרב פרנק, רבה של ירושלים, שאמר עליו שהוא יהיה הפוסק של אותו רבה, הוא זה שצריך להספיד אותו. הגאון יעקב עדס, רבי יעקב עדס, מזקני הדור הקודם, שבזמן האירוסין של הרב, האירוסין שהרב הזה היה צעיר בגיל 23, אמר רבי יעקב עדס, הוא, חכם עובדיה, כבר עכשיו אמר אותה. זה המשפט שאמר רבי יעקב עדס. הוא כבר עכשיו אמר אותה. הם יכולים להספיד אותי. אנחנו יכולים להספיד. אנחנו יכולים לדבר כמו ילדים קטנים שמדברים על אבא שעזב אותם. אבא שברח, אבא שהלך. ומשאיר אותם לבד, אז ילדים מדברים, ילדים צועקים, ילדים מוחים. זה מה שאנחנו יכולים לעשות. להספיד אנחנו לא יכולים. אני אגיד לכם דבר שהייתי בחודשים האחרונים של הרב בצער גדול ממנו, והיה לי קשה מאוד מאוד לסבול את המחשבה הזאת. הייתי רואה, וכל מי שהיה לידו ראה את הסבל הגדול שהוא היה נתון בו. היה לו ייסורי גוף וגם ייסורי נפש. ייסורים קשים מאוד מאוד, כמעט שאי אפשר בכלל לתאר אותם. היה מנסה ללמוד, מתאמץ ללמוד. עוד פעם יושב על הגמרא, עוד פעם יושב על הספרים, ולא יכול. עוד פעם מנסה, ולא יכול. ולהתגבר פה, ולנסה לחטוף פה באיזושהי שעה. אבל לא יכול, ברוב הייסורים. ואני נזכרתי שלפני כשנה, אולי יותר, היה איזשהו זמן שאני מאוד מאוד דיברתי. פעמיים היה כמעט באיזה הפרש של כמה ימים. בבוקר שבאתי אצלו, 8:30 לא אצלו בבית. הוא אמר לי משה פה לידי. אמר לי, תגיד לי, אתה יודע מה זה מיטת נשיקה? ככה שאל אותי. אתה יודע מה זה מיטת נשיקה? אמרתי לו, לא. אמר לי, תשמע, מיטת נשיקה לפי אבי דעתי, ככה אמר, אני אומר את המילים שלו, שלפי דעתו של הרב, ככה אמר, מיטת נשיקה זה אדם שמצליח להיות ביישוב הדעת עד היום האחרון שלו. להיות ביישוב הדעת ולהיות בבריאות ולהצליח ללמוד תורה עד הרגע שהנשמה שלו יצאת. והיה אומר את זה והיה אומר את זה עם דמעות. זה נקרא מיטת נשיקה. והיה אומר, אני חושב שצריכים להתפלל על זה. שנזכה למות מיטת נשיקה. שהשם ייתן לנו יישוב הדעת עד הרגע האחרון שהנשמה שלנו יצאת. אתה אמר, היה לו חבר לרב שקראו לו רבי יוסף שהוא היה חבר לזקין הגדול. והרב היה מספר לי ממש בהרגע ובהשתובבות איך שהוא נפטר. הוא נפטר ממש מתוך לימוד. ככה היה רבי יוסף כפח, ואני הוספתי לו סיפור על הגאון רבי יהודה אסד, שבטח הציבור מכיר אותו. יהודה אסד היה אחד מהגאונים של הדורות הקודמים. הוא נפטר בעודו כותב תשובה. באמצע כתיבתו תשובה בהלכה, אז הוא נפטר. והלכו בשביל להכין אותו לקבורה, ואז ישבו הפרנסים ודיברו שיש לו כמה בנות בוגרות, והן כבר מבוגרות ואין כסף בשביל לחתן אותם. אז מה יעשו? איך יחתנו אותם? נתן אחד מהם עצה שהגאון רבי יהודה אסד היה יהודי יפה תואר והיה גאון עולם, אבל אין ממנו שום תמונה. אין איזה צילומים. בואו אנחנו נצלם אותו עכשיו, אחרי שהוא נפטר. נצלם אותו. ונעשה בקופי, נעשה הרבה תמונות, ונמכור בהרבה כסף את התמונות שלו, וככה נוכל, מה שנקרא, לחתן את הקלות, לחתן את הקלות שלו. וככה עשו, הלבישו אותו, יודעים, הושיבו אותו על כיסא, וזאת התמונה היחידה שיש מהגאון רבי יהודה אסד. תמונה שהיא לאחר אותו, ומי שיסתכל טוב ידע שהוא לא חי, מי שיסתכל טוב בעיניים שלו, ידע שיש לו פנים של אדם שלא חי. אני חשבתי שהרב לא מכיר את הסיפור הזה. אז הוא אמר לי, אתה יודע שכל אותם פרנסים מתו באותה שנה? ככה אמר. כל אותם פרנסים מתו באותה שנה. כי אומנם הם התכוונו לטובה, אבל עדיין הם פגעו בכבודו של הרב, לבוא ולצלם תמונה, אדם שנפטר, ולהושיב אותו בבתים, וככה עושים את זה. כאילו אין כסף, שהם היו צריכים טוב, בכל אופן, כוונתם הייתה טובה, אבל מעשיהם לא היה בזה, כן, טובה. הוא היה אומר לי, תראה איך זכור אלה, תראה איך זכר, כן, הגאון רבי יהודה אסד, נפטר מתוך כתיבת תשובה, נפטר מתוך עמדות בלימוד תורה, והלוואי ונזכיר, לא בוחר. אני אומר לכם את האמת, כל החודשים האחרונים תמה ועצוב. למה הוא לא זכה? אני כל משתוקק לזה, צדיק יסוד עולם, גאון הדורות שהיה לנו, איזה נשמה, כל ישראל היו מה שנקרא תחתיו. איך את הדבר הזה הוא לא זכה? ככה הייתי כמו מהרהר ככה, כן, במשך תקופה. בזמן הלוויה בא לי כמו איזה הברקה כזאת, וקצת, החומר שנקרא, המחשבה שלי נרגעה. ואחר כך שאלתי גדולים, אמרו לי שנכון הדבר. כל הימים שקודם שהוא נפטר, אני לא יודע פה בחוץ לארץ אם היה, אבל בארץ הייתה התעוררות שהייתה פרק אפילו כמעט לא נשמע דבר. איזה קבלות, איזה תשובה, איזה ש"סים שאנשים עבדו, כן, וגם פה עכשיו עשו ש"ס. איזה ציורים, ואיזה חיזוקים, כן, נשים בצניעות, מה שנקרא חיזוקים שאי אפשר בכלל להבין אותם. ואז אמרתי דבר כזה. הרב, הרב השלום, היה לו דבר אחד שחמור שהיה יוצא מן הכלל. אבל לא הייתה לו את האהבה. לא הייתה לו את האהבה בעולם יותר גדולה, מאשר לשבת ולראות אותו. זה היה משהו שאי אפשר בכלל להבין אותו. זה היה בגדר כמו אדם, כן. כמו להבדיל אדם שהוא כמו איזה משוגע, כמו איזה מסומם שרוצה לקחת עכשיו את הדבר שלו. היה משוגע בשביל ללמוד תורה. משהו שאי אפשר בכלל להבין אותו. כן? הוא סיפר לי שכשהיה אברך צעיר בבית הכנסת סופיות, זה דבר שהוא סיפר לי. הוא סיפר לי כי אני שאלתי אותו. שאלתי אותו, כי שמעתי את הסיפור הזה, זה היה נראה לי סיפור קצת ככה משונה. אז שאלתי אותו אם הסיפור נכון, הוא אמר לי זה נכון. בבית הכנסת סופיות, בתקופות מסוימות, התקרה הייתה דולפת מים. הייתה דולפת מים בזמן החורף. וכל הבית הכנסת היה מלא מים. היה מגיע בבוקר, כן, הוא לא יכול לשבת ללמוד. היה יושב עם המעיל שלו על הראש שלו, שם את המעיל על הראש שלו. אחרי חצי שעה שהמעיל על הראש שלו, גם המעיל כבר נוטף מים. היה לוקח את הכרית, זה היה בית הכנסת של המוחר, יש שם כריות תרבות כאלה. תופס שעות את הכרית על ראשו וככה ללמוד. אחרי 3 שעות גם הכרית כבר נוטפת מים. שם אותה בצד, לוקח כרית אחרת. מהבוקר עד הלילה אדם לומד עם כריות על הראש, איפה רואים דבר כזה? מי עושה את לראות כאלה? ללמוד עם כריות על הראש, וסגרית כבדה, ידיים לא כואבות, כן? כתוב שם משה רבנו שיצא כשהוא מלכו את ידו. הוא ככה מרים כריות לבדו, אמר לי כן, ככה עשה. זה דברים שאי אפשר בכלל להבין אותם, זה לא המושגים שלנו. האחים שלו, זה סיפור שלו, הרבה יודעים אותו, האחים שלו, בזמן בחרותו, היו קצת מציקים לו. חלק מהם, לא מתוך כוונה רעה. ואחד מהם, בזמן החורף, שם אותו בתוך הנעליים קרח. כי היה כאן אדם מאוד מאוד הולך ללמוד תורה. כדי שלא יוכל ללמוד. קצת היה איזה מעשה קונדס, לא מתוך משהו של אנטי, חס ושלום. מתוך מעשה ליצנות. הוא קם בבוקר, הוא בא ללמוד את הנעליים, הוא רואה שאת הנעליים שלו יש קרח. כל אדם פשוט יגיד, טוב, אלוס, אמנם נתראה. ובחוץ קר, ובחוץ גשם. הרב שם 3-4 זוגות גרביים, ויצא ככה ללמוד, עם גרביים, בלי נעליים. בקיצור, המושגים שלו בלימוד תורה זה לא המושגים שלנו. ועם כל זה מצאנו פלא אצלו, שהיה מוכן לסגור את הספר. היה מוכן לבטל את הלימוד תורה שלו, בשביל ללכת ולעורר ציבור. בשביל ללכת ולקרב ציבור. בשביל ללכת וללמד אנשים פשוטים. זה משהו שהוא לא מובן. אדם בדרגה של אהבת תורה כמו שלו, צריך היה להיות כמו זמן מבינה, ספון ותמון וסבור, ולומד 20 שעות ביממה, והוא כותב לנו לא 50 ספרים, אלא כותב לנו איזה 300 ספרים. וזה מה שצריך היה להיות, כן, מה שנקרא לכאורה להיות, אבל לא. הפקיר את עצמו, שם את עצמו בצד, כי הוא הבין שזה מה שהשם רוצה ממנו. פעם שלמדנו הלכות תלמוד תורה, הוא כתב בספר שלו בהליכות עולם, הביא איזשהו פוסק, שבפוסק הזה כתוב שלא מבטלים תורה בשביל לימוד צדקאות. לא מבטלים תורה בשביל צדקאות. אז אני קראתי את זה. זה היה עדיין לפני שהספר יצא, אז אני אמרתי מן הסתם, אבל הוא לא מסכים איתו. כי הרב יוצא בשביל צדקאויות הרבה, אז שהייתי עובר איתו בהגעה על הספרים, קראנו את הכל ביחד, אמרתי לו, הרב, אני חושב שהרב חולק עליו, לא? אני חס ושלום, צודק. לבטל תורה בשביל צדקאות, איך אפשר לבטל תורה לצדקאות? אז איך הרב לבטל? הוא אומר, אתה חושב שהם צריכים אותי? זה המילים שלו. אני צריך אותם. מה פירוש? אבל אני רוצה להשפיע עליהם שישימו את הבנות בישיבות. אני רוצה להשפיע עליהם שישימו את הבנות במקומות טובים. למה שהציבור ישמע לי? אני צריך לתת לציבור מתנות. אני בא לשמחות שלהם. אני בא לבריתות שלהם, ככה הציבור חייב. ואז בעוד חצי שנה, בעוד שנה, שאני בא לדבר איתם על תורה ועל יראת שמיים, ככה הציבור שומע. זאת אומרת, הוא מוכן לבטל תורה, כמו לעשות ביזנס, כמו לעשות סחורה, כדי שהציבור ישמע לו. זה דברים שלא ראינו. ואז נחה דעתי, אמרתי לעצמי, אם הרב, זה היה כל מהותו, לבוא ולבטל את התורה בשביל לקרב אנשים, אז הנה, בצורה הרב יעשה. מן השמיים, גם בזמנים האחרונים שלפני פטירתו, למרות שבוודאי היה מגיע לו שהוא ימות מהעולם מתוך משובדה ומתוך לימוד תורה. אבל כזו התעוררות וכזה קירוב שנעשה בעם ישראל, זה בדיוק היה מהותו שלנו. אז כמו כביכול מן השמיים עשו את סוף דעתו, ירדו לסוף דעתו למרות שזה לא המילים שהוא אמר. אנחנו לא יכולים להעריך, גם בגלל שמפחיד לדבר וגם יש לו חכמים גדולים, שולחו יעזור, שנזכה בעצם השם ללכת במרחב. הוא היה, תדעו לכם, כן? עמוק עמוק מאמצענו, חושבים אותו הבקיא הכי גדול בעולם. אני אומר, לפי מה שראינו מהבקיאות, אני אף פעם לא הייתי מתפעל. המעיין הכי גדול שהיה, המעיין, העומק הכי גדול שהיה, לא ראיתי בחיים עיון כזה, זה היה אצלו. אני מהבקיאות בכלל לא מתפעל. יש היום הרבה בקיאים, ולא רק מהמחשבים, אפילו בלי מחשבים. אבל עיון עמוק וזך ונפלא כזה כמוהו ולא ראיתי. ענווה כמו שהייתה אצלו, זה פלא פלאים, אי אפשר בכלל לתאר את הענווה שלו. והצדקות והחסידות שלו, כל זה מה שנקרא בהסתר. כל זה בהסתר. אנחנו כמו עלינו ראינו. אני כמו עליי ראיתי בשעה 2, בשעה 2:30 בלילה, לפני בוקר, שהיינו מסיימים את הלימוד, היה הולך לחדר, היה עושה כביכול כאילו אני לא יודע. וראיתי אותו מחפש ספר. הלכתי איתו לחדר של השינה שלו, למיטה. יודעים איזה ספר ערך בשבילה? מחזור ליום כיפור. תגידו לו, מחפש, הולך מחזור ליום כיפור, סוחר מחזור ליום כיפור, אצלו לחדר בבית, בשינה. ולא בחודש אלול ולא בימים נוראים, סתם באמצע החורף, סתם באמצע הקיץ. אין ספור פעמים ראינו אותו הולך לישון עם מחזור ליום כיפור. מי יכול להסביר דברים כאלה? אנחנו לא יודעים מה קרה, כן? ליבי אומר לי שהוא קרא את הפיוט של לחיים שהוא אהב אותו הרבה, אבל אנחנו לא יכולים לדעת בוודאות מה קרה. אבל היה לו עומקים, היה לו חסידות, היה לו פרשיות שאנחנו לא מבינים אותם בכלל. שיכול לעזור שנזכה ללכת בקצה קצה ומדרחיו. וכן אני רצות לומר לי.
I would like to invite Rabbi Harold Sutton to say today on the route.
פשוט, רוצים לבין, פשוט כל הרבנים, פשוט כל הקהל הקדוש. As was mentioned before me, it is not our place, nor even would we dare to create a spit for the rabbi. The rabbi's Geonut is so widely known. That the words of his spit just inappropriate. Until today, since Gimel Hashvan, we couldn't even and have not yet even uttered one time even a hashkavah yet. I just found it impossible. How am I going to keep the rabbi? How are we going to say divrei hashkavah for Vodarav? What could we say? So for sure, Kavahomed, words of his spirit. But I felt that maybe we'll mention just a dabble or a few points, literally a drop in an ocean, if not more, so that maybe we ourselves since we no longer have the living example on how to live, maybe we ourselves could learn and grow from his experience. In this week's Parashah, we read of how Yaakov Avinu left his home. He left everything he knew, was forced to go to a foreign world. And the Parashah that we read is one long Parashah until he comes back to Eretz Israel. And we wonder, why was it? You read, why was it that Yaakov Avinu had to undergo such struggles? Almost he had to go to Haran, spend his life in Haran, only have God tell him to come back, revisit Abraham Avinu's journey, come back to hit Shechem. What was the point? And I thought, and I saw an interesting idea this past Shabbat. The Avot, Abraham and Yitzhak, left their homeland. Abraham left his homeland, and Yitzhak stayed in Eretz Israel. And they lived their whole lives with the centrality of Eretz Israel, as that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. But there could be a mistake. There could be an error. That what? As those ancients thought, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was a god of a land, as the ancient Ovdei believed. So there's interesting promise that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Yaakov, and only to Yaakov. Even Yitzhak, when he gives him a berakah, doesn't mention this point. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu's berakah to Yaakov at the Sulam reiterates Yitzhak's berakah, Yitzhak Avinu's berakah, but adds one point. And that is, I will be with you wherever you go, and on every travel you go, I will be with you. Wherever you are in the world. That was a new promise, unique to Yaakov Avinu, that even on his last journey was reiterated by Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu melo kol haaretz kivod. Over the last month, as we think about the great loss that Am Yisrael suffered, it is obvious to us and is known, and the great rabbis have spoken about his great hatmadah, his great diligence in learning. How many of us stood, as it was mentioned, 10, 15, 20 minutes after being called into the rabbi and stood there, and the rabbi was studying and was standing 3 feet away, and you just had the treat to watch him not budge. His love of Torah and his geonut, that was beyond anything we can even put into words. They talk about 56 sefarim, but in today's printing presses, when you read the books, Yabi Ahmed, 1 volume maybe is about 15 to 20 books in 1 volume. The way books are written today. It's something we can't even imagine. His Biki'ud, widely known. His Iyun, as the rabbi just pointed out, less appreciated. Just yesterday we were reading at Teshuvah, and we saw a discussion back and forth, and he quoted a certain book, and he brought a certain rabbi who argued with him and brought a proof against him from a certain book. And Hakham Obadya writes, he quotes the book, and he writes, anyone who sees the simple pshat of the words will understand what this means. Now you go and look in the book, and you realize that his analysis, that his proof from this work, which they were trying to bring a proof against him, his analysis proof of this work was simply the whole Teshuvah read differently based on the correct punctuation. Remove a comma from one word, put it behind that word, and now analyze the whole Teshuvah meant something totally different, proved his point, and knocked out his opponent's point. When you read the Chin Katav, you don't understand when you open the book and analyze it, the depth that is in each time he quotes a book. That's the unique, special about his knowledge. We've heard so many stories about his amazing capacity to love Klal Yisrael. Many people understood that the rabbi possessed koach de'hetera adif. That's true. He always looked for the lenient approach. But why? It is true that our rabbis tell us that it is always better to see for the leniencies. But I remember when his Pesach, and he many times reiterated the Pesach about, and it wasn't controversial, and I don't want to get into the controversy, but just to understand where he came from. Why he was so adamant about permitting the Eruv. Where did it come from? And many times we was there, and he would call me and say, how was the story? How's the situation? And he would ask. And one time I had the audacity to say, well, why? Why? Why is this such an issue? And he says, Ki ra'iti pa'am in Brooklyn. I saw one time in Brooklyn. Okay. Ra'iti pa'am in Brooklyn. Neshim ba'ot barehov in tik. With a bag. Ani lo yachol lishon. I can't sleep when I see that. I can't sleep when I witness that there are others that are going off the path. The rabbi lost sleep day and night when others were not when others that he could help were not being tended to. He couldn't sleep. So when we talk of koach de'hetera adif, it's not a person who is merely simply looking for leniencies. We know of the hamrot of the rabbi. Mosai Kippur, after the fast, not only did he wait Rabbeinu Tam, but times where everyone around was dying to eat and waiting for Rabbeinu Tam, and Rabbeinu Tam passed and went, and he was reading, and he says, you eat. This is a man up till this 2 years ago, 91 years old. Atem tochlu. Eat, b'chabur. He's still learning, he's still going over an idea. 91 years old, not well, Motzei Kippur, after Rabbeinu Tam. This was not a man who sought leniencies, but he's a man whose love for Klal Yisrael knew no bounds. As was mentioned, what could else tear him away from his Torah but his love for Klal Yisrael? What could take him away from his first love, his precious love? I will never forget the time when he came to America. He landed at a 5:30 a.m. flight. We picked him up from the airport, and the day of Shiurei Torah from 5:30 in the morning, landing. How much of us, when we landed, when we land from a flight 5:30 a.m., you got to go home, wash, shower, rest, do something. We get to the hotel, unload the baggage, not even up to the room, get back in the car. Where we go? Shiurim. Bet Knesset, to Bet Knesset, to a kollel, to a fundraiser, to a situation. It's 10 o'clock at night. I have to run and scramble to buy food in the meantime so you can eat in the car on the way. 10 o'clock at night, on the day that a man approaching 70 years old has not rested a wink. There's another place that's expecting the rabbi. There's another place that's expecting the rabbi. And the rabbi, it's 10 o'clock at night. He's exhausted. Please. They didn't dare arrest the rabbi, so they approached the Rabbanit. And the Rabbanit said, absolutely not. Hakham Obadya lo na. I remember. Take him home, she said. And the rabbi, what's the problem? She said, another place. He says, no, we'll go. And so the Rabbanit asks, Hakham Obadya, אתה לא מרחם על עצמך. You have no pity on yourself. And he turned to her and he says, never forget this, "Bishvil ma bati la'olam?" Why did I come to this world? "Bishvil ma higati la'olam hazeh?" Why did I come to this world if not to teach Torah to the people? This is one of what we lost. A person whose love, who's concerned for every single Jew. How is it that we can explain that what otherwise we would look as a rabbi, a bookworm, who never left his books, never left, never wanted to leave, whose main focus was from his study, that he had over 1 million people connected in some way, one way or another at his funeral? How could that be? The world has bookworms, introverts, who affect 20 people. And they have extroverted people, charismatic speakers, who affect many. Here we have a rabbi who only wanted to be in his study, was a gifted speaker, no doubt, beyond imagination, who affected the world. There's only one answer, and that is they loved him because he knew he loved them. They understood that every one of those Jews was in his heart. So it didn't make a difference to him. If you take pictures of the funeral, you will see Sephardim. You will see Ashkenazim. You will see Hasidim with a shtreimel. You will see people with kippot silugot. And I looked carefully, you will see people with no kippot, and you will see people with earrings. Because every Jew, as was mentioned earlier, knew how much he cared and loved for them. His humility knew no bounds. His care and his soft demeanor. I will never forget the day when I entered into taking my semicha exam in his home in Rehavim. And I was on Isur Ve'eter, and I was this young American boy going to take a semicha with the giant of the universe. And he took his time, and he tested me, and I had guessed, knowing the rabbi, that I was surely going to get a question on Svika. So I learned the Gemara, and I went over it, and I made sure 100 times over, this question, I will know how to answer this one. If I don't know anything else, I'll know how to answer this question. And sure enough, the first question was on Svika. Exactly what I thought. And I said, wow, how lucky could you be? I was so prepared for this question. And I stood there, I looked at the rabbi, I started reciting it, and I made one big mess out of the pain and the nervousness. And the rabbi looked at me, I'll never forget it. And he said, wait a second. Put his arm around my shoulder, pinched my cheek, and says, why don't you start again? And of course, with love, concern, not rebuke of why are you wasting my time. Let's start again. Encouragement. Ahava. That's what he was about. Every single Jew had a place. That level of humility so many times, when we would disturb him with bringing people in. And sometimes he couldn't see everybody. And then that night or the next day, an apology. We're disturbing. I'm sorry I couldn't see him that day. I was a little busy. It's a staggering level of humility. How many people, as the rabbis mentioned, with? How many times was he giving beracha and tears were pouring down from his eyes? Anyone who would see him on the day of Tisha B'Av would think that you're listening to a wailing baby of the kinot, of the viduyim on Yom Kippur, and cried like a baby. With all that humility, he knew one thing. When times needed him to be tough and stand for the truth, nothing could budge him. Many years back, Shas was beginning as a party. And there was a shortness of funds, approximately $10 million. We'd come to America to collect money for Shas. This is in the first few years. And there was only a few seats in the beginning. And there was some controversy. And there was a few people that were coming to meet him. And I was told, at this time I was driving around the rabbi, I was told to stay close to the rabbi, this meeting is going to be a little difficult. I said, what's going to happen? He says, there's going to be something. There are people coming from Los Angeles to see the rabbi with a netziv, a representative, that they want this person to be a member of the Shas party, and the rabbi is not confident that he represents his values. Okay, what's the big deal? No, they're important people. So, we come in, and into an office marches a few important members, and come with them an entourage of servants, and there's 2 or 3 of us in the room with the rabbi, and in those days they used to have these salesmen with big black bags, and they march in with 4 of them. I remember this like today. And they speak to the rabbi, they say, Rabbi, we want to get together, we want a representative to be part of the party. And the rabbi says, I just don't think it's going to work. No. So they said, Rabbi, they opened these 4 salesman bags, and in it is $100 bills. They claimed that it was filled in the mid-'80s with $9 million in cash. Now, I saw that money. And I'm like, a young boy looking at $9 million in cash, that's not easy. And the rabbi didn't even flinch. He looked at the salesman's bags and he says, Ani lo nogea b'dolar echad. I won't touch $1. If you want to merit Olam Haba, take all that money and hand it out to yeshivot kedoshot and give it to tzedakah. That's where the money will really do good. And the rabbi just walked out and says, and he told me, he says, this person is crazy. Does he think I would touch a nickel? הוא חושב שאני אגע בכסף? הוא חושב שאפשר לקנות אותי? Does he think that he can buy me? For the rabbi, it was simple. Of course not. Money doesn't mean anything to him. You can't buy the rabbi, has v'shalom. To the rabbi, it was all the things that we think about are so important. Didn't mean much. But when he spoke to us, and if they were important to us, they became important to him. I'll never forget, one time I was lamenting a certain situation about some difficulties. And he said, what's the problem? And I was saying, I'm not having enough time to get involved in studies. And he looks and he says, you're teaching Klal Yisrael. And these were his words. How jealous of you am I that you're able to teach young children. We know how many people the rabbi has taught. We know that what we cannot do, we cannot believe to accomplish is not a trillionth of what he's affected. But he made you feel special. He made you feel important. The author of the greatest halachic works in centuries turned to you and empowered you with love and care. He made you feel that you were doing something. And he knew, and he followed up, and it was amazing to your life when things weren't going well, he immediately, the first thing when I had certain issues, immediately sent a message. And I've saved it. Short, maybe 3 or 4 words. Al tid'ag, HaKadosh Baruch Hu ya'azor. That 4 words meant more than anything. He took his time out to think, to know, to pay attention what's happening to us. Do we understand what that meant? For a man whose seconds were counted. But Am Yisrael was his love. The Torah was his love. And we, whatever we have today, whatever we've built, whatever we've studied, this community as well as the thousands of communities, all only on his merit, all only on his zehut. If halakha is taught in this community, it's because he wrote it, because he established it. If the words of Ma'ana are being practiced in the community, it's due to his merit. If we understand anything, if we could teach even 30 seconds of halakha, that's not 30 seconds of halakha that we could teach, that's not because of him. That we're not relying on his shoulders. That we're not like midgets standing on the shoulder of a giant. There is nothing we have that we did not get from him. So, on this, we pray and hope that in his merit we continue to grow and we continue to strive and hope that in some way we can mimic something of what this great man who walked this earth for a little under a century and has taught us and has given us. Tihye nishmato tzurah b'zorhayin.
We leave for time is late. I just want to make this to you. I was asked to read the Siyum of the Shas Masechet Midah, as you know, the last topic of Masechet Midah is Zava v'Shomer Yom Keneged Yom. Whoever knows it, I'm just reading the end of the Masechet. Amar Rav Shemaya Levi Abba, Ema b'mama teve Zava v'Lelia teve Nidah. Since the pasuk says, "V'isha ki yazub zovdama yamim rabim, velo et midatah, or ki tazub al midatah." Since according to Rabbi Akiva, we're learning from the Pesukim, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah זה קבלה, שאומרת יום כנגד יום. וזבה, אבל מהפסוקים, רבי עקיבא לא אומר מהפסוקים. If you learn from the Pesukim, so maybe only when she bleed in the daytime is considered 3 days in a row, זה זבה גדולה, or day or 2, זבה קטנה, but just only in the daytime. Because the Torah says, ימים רבים, ימים ולא לילות. אם זה בלילה, אלא דין שניתנה, לא דין שזבה, זה דין אחר לגמרי. עמלה עליך מלכרה על נגדתה. Because the continuation of the pasuk is או כי תזוב על נגדתה. Why the Torah continue או כי תזוב על נגדתה? על הכוונה right after. Right after, when she ends the Shivat Yemei Nigdah, by the end of the 7th day, and right away, she bleeds. As מה זה? When she bleeds at night. And yet the Torah called her what? Zava. So it doesn't make a difference if she bleeds in the daytime or the nighttime. She's considered Zava. Either Zava Ketana or Zava Gedola. עמלה עליך מלכרה נגדתה, סמוך נגדתה, סמוך נגדתה, אימת הווה בלליה. וכך קרלה זבה. תנא דבי אליהו, כל השונה הלכות בכל יום, מובטח לו שהוא בין העולם הבא שנאמר, הליכות עולם לא. אל תקרא הליכות, אלא הלכות. אדם עליו מסכת נגדה ואדם עליו כולי הש"ס. דעתה עליו מסכת נגדה ודעתה עליו כולי הש"ס. לן תשמינא מסכת נגדה וכולי הש"ס, ותשמינא עליו ועם האדם לה ועם הדעתה. אדם עליו מסכת נגדה וכולי הש"ס ואדם עליו. דעתה עליו מסכת נגדה וכולי הש"ס דעתה עליו. לן תשמינא מסכת נגדה וכולי הש"ס, ותשמינא עליו ועם האדם לה ועם הדעתה. אדם עליו מסכת נגדה וכולי הש"ס ואדם עליו. דעתם עליו מסכת נידה וכולי השב, תדע ותערך עליו, נדע תשי מנהג, מסכת נידה וכולי השב, נדע תשי מנהג, לה בעלם העדן, לה בעלם העדן, תגר רצון לפניך אדוני אלוהינו לאבותינו, שאין תורתך ומתנו בעולם הזה ותהיה אמנו לעולם הבא. חנינה בר פפא, רמי בר פפא, נחמן בר פפא, חי בר פפא, רמלי בר פפא, רפרם בר פפא, רכיש בר פפא, סורחה בר פפא, אדם בר פפא, דארו בר פפא. ועלימנה אדוני אלוהינו את עולמך בגידול כפי עולמך ותעשה ונהיה כולנו נעשה ישראל נעשה ישראלנו וישראל ישראל עמך ותעשה כולנו תאשר לך וקדש ועצך בשמה ובית החכם לשמת זכותך כי לעולם יהיה גילים גילים וחמקת על מעם ויבוש לעולם ישכח זכותך כי חי גיתני ברוך אתה אדוני למדין חוקך אמן 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 של הבית מודים אנחנו לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואבותינו ששמת חלקנו בשם מתלמידיו ומתלמידי מורנו הרב ולא שם חלקנו בשבין קרנות שעם משכימים ומשכימים אנו משכימים דברי תורה ומשכימים דברים בטלים אנו עמלים ומעמלים אנו עמלים מקבלים שכר ומעמלים אינם מקבלים שכר אנו רצים והם רצים אנו רצים לחיים העולם הבא ורצים בשחת שנאמר ואתה ימים תולדינו בשחת אשר דמי אומר לחסויים מהם ואני אפתח בת נחסום לבניך אדוני אלוהינו ולוהי אבותינו כתבים שעזרתנו לסיים מסכת נידה וכולי הש"ס כך תעזרנו להתחיל מסכתות ספרים אחרים וסמן מאוד באמת שום לעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה וזכות כל התנאים והאמוראים והמפרשים תלמידי חכמים יעמוד לנו כל המסיימים וזרעם וזרע זרעם שלא תמוש תורה מפינו בלי זרענו ובלי זרענו העולם ותקיים בנו כשכתוב בתלך תקרא תנחי אותך ושמונך שמור עליך ואהב כיסאותה היא תשיחיך תביגו ימיך ושוב לך של חיים או לקמים ימינה ושמאלה או שבכבוד ובמנחס בוא נתחיל מסכת ברכות אדוני זעמו היטל אדוני, דיבר כמה שלא מתחיל מסכת ברכות במנחת וכבוד משנה ראשונה מתי? כבוד
ממתי קוראים את שמה? מתי קוראים את שמה באביב? בשעה שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתם בסוף השמונה הראשונה דברי רבי אליעזר החכמים אומרים עד חצות רבן גמליאל אומר עד שעלה עמוד השחר, מעשה לבאו בניו מבית המשתה, אמרו לו, לא קראינו לשמה, אמר להם, אם לא עלה עמוד השחר, חייבים אתם לקרוא. ולא זו בלבד, אמרו, אלא כל מה שאמרו חכמים, עד חצות, סדנת שלם עמוד השחר. הקטר חלבים ואיברים, סדנת שלם עמוד השחר. בכל מיכלים, סדנת שלם עמוד השחר. אם כן, אמרו חכמים, החצות, כדי להחליט לאדם מן העבירה.
כבודו יגיד איזה כמה פירוש קטן על זה, משהו להלכה. רק להלכה, כבודו יגיד מה פסק ההלכה, מה נפסק, מה פסק הפוסקים, ואני אגיד כדי שאני צריך לחבות. לא, הסברנו טוב, לחבות. לחבות.
ורחום בינו בכל מכל כל, אמן כן ירצון, ירצון. רצון מתארגות לסנגן רבי הופמן. אז כל מה שלאבותינו עשו, את כל האירוע הזה, תברכו בינו מקום מכל כל,
תודה רבה, פנחס, רבותיי. First of all, I want to thank the Hoffman family, the followers of the Rabbi for many years, even though they've been Ashkenazim, but they're more Sfaradim than the Sfaradim. I want to thank Mr. Uri Nidam that he contributed today, he donated the Saudat Mitzvah and the refreshments. And I was asked, people asked me to say a few words. I don't like to do B'Mha B'Arabit because maybe there are old people, somebody has to take medicine, or people tired. I don't want to cause any Torah Tzibur. אפילו לכבוד הרב, אני יודע, הרב was מקפיד מאוד בתורה ציבור. He was obsessed about it, not to make any Torah ציבור. We have prayed B'Mha B'Arabit together, and B'Azat Hashem, whoever want to stay, can stay. Whoever want to leave, and Mohelo Merosh HaShalom, לא בשבילי. You can leave and go home and relax, but I will speak after Arabit. רבי חנינא בן עקשיא אומר, רצה חנינא בחוסר לפיכך, אבל אני אומר שנאמר, אדוני יחפש למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר, יגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא ידבר כבריותם, ויחוז ויחמול, עדי בשמע שמה של מורנו ורבנו עטר את ראשנו, משוש רוח אפנו הנלכד בשחיתותינו בייסורים קשים, מורנו רבי עובדיה יוסף בן גרזי, רוח אדוני תנחנו ולמעננו. נפשו בטוב תלים וזרועי רשם. לכבוד בנחה. Okay, Rabotai, we're already organizing another siyum for the end of the year. Shas Mishnayot and Talmud Bavli for the 12 months. Already we have 12 people that accepted upon themselves to learn 12 Masechtot. With 12 Masechtot we are covered. There's another 18 Masechtot. If you have any interest, you can meet my dear son Rabbi Obadya or Rabbi Obadya Hoffman. בעזרת השם, היא למשנה, אבל ללמוד משנה עם פירוש. הרב סובר משנה עם פירוש זה לא לימוד. אולי משנה עם פירוש, רבנו עובדיה, זה סימפל פירוש, מספיק, כן? עם פירוש. ותלמוד לפחות עם ראשי. טוב רבותיי, thank you for staying. I will say a few words. I try to be as short as possible. It's very hard for me. But I think there's nothing better than quoting a beautiful poem. A poem that was engraved on the tomb of Rabbeinu Yitzhak Al-Fassi. Can you imagine what the Jews in Spain felt after the Gdol Ador? And you know Harambam, how much he thought highly of Rabbeinu Yitzhak Al-Fassi, B'Talmido Rav Yosef ben Megas. And it was very difficult and very dark. And there was a big poet in Spain, Rabbi Moshe ibn Izra, Rabbi Ahava ibn Izra was older than him. Related to him, but היה גדול ממנו. And he wrote in the grave of Rabbi Yitzhak Al-Fassi. I'm not going to translate it, I hope that you will understand it. כתבו בעת ברזל על שמיר, שבר אשר היה לזיכרון. יכלו ימות עולם ויתחדש אבלו לכל יבוא לדור אחרון. It's a continuous אבל. אמרו בקבר זה מקור חוכמה נקבר ועולם בא בעיוורון. יום ניצלה נזמה בחייתה תורה והורידה עדי גרון. באו בנסיון ובמרירות עליו תייללו בשברו. כי חוק ספרות ובכות על המקום בו נקברו לוחות בהארון. And then our great poet Rabbi Yehuda Levi, alav shalom, visited the grave and he added another 3 lines. Harim beyom Sinai necha ra'ashu ki malachei ha'el becha pagashu ויכתבו תורה בלוחות ליבך וצבי כתריה לך חבשו. לא עשו כוח נבונים לעמוד, לולא תבונות ממך דרשו. It's apropos, every word and every line is suitable to the greatness of this holy neshama, this great teacher, מורנו ורבנו, עטרת ראשנו, משוש רוח אפנו, שנלכד בשחיתותינו, רבנו עובדיה יוסף בן גרג'י, הרני כפרת משכבו. I have many hours, moments, special, very unique, very personal with the rabbi. I can't talk about it because I don't want to reflect on myself. We're here to respect the rabbi. But there's little I can say what I saw and learned. We cannot comprehend this greatness. Impossible. I'm not saying because he's my rabbi or is a good. Impossible. Impossible. I saw him under pressure, under terrible pressure, being abused terribly. The media, marbitzim, makim. I saw him in very sad moments too. His gdullah is second to none. We're talking about a small child, came from Baghdad, his father had money, came to Eretz Israel with gold, make the wrong investment, ala haaretz ve'ala mehya. That's it, they became poor family. And the boy is learning Torah and from very young age, 6, 7 years old. He started to dream about writing books. And he started to write books. And he called them names. And this name really became the names of the generation. You know, his first notebook called Yabia Omer. 7, 8 years old, he decided to write a book, Yabia Omer, Yaakov Yosef Obadya ben Yaakov. It's an indication that he was sent to us. And I will tell you some of points that you can see that it's not natural and normal thing at all. Yom leyom yabi'a omer, velayla lelayla yahabbe da'at. There's no one in our generation and even the previous generations that yom leyom היה מחדש תורה, ולילה ללילה יחווה דעת. כשאומר רבי משה אבן עזרא, יכלו ימי העולם, the days will end, but the sorrow and the mourning on you, it's already renewed, והתחדש אבלו, לכל יבוא לדור האחרון. Why? It's a continuous אבל. I'm still mourning. Why? Just thinking that if he was alive now, he will write more Hiddushim. It's not like somebody is 95 years old or 90 years old. He's not going to see the wedding of his grandchild. He's not going to eat any more mahshi. He's not going to be with us. He was so good. He's not going to put the tefillin, not going to pray minyan. Those mitzvot, you're hofshi. His mitzvah is his personal gain. But the Torah that he was mehadesh, like a vivid well, all the time, continuously, non-stop. This stopped. It stopped. It's ever forever. לכן אומר פה, יכלו ימות העולם והתחדש אבלו, לכל יבוא לדור האחרון. And this young boy, under very hard conditions, in a very young age, they decided to put him in the Yeshiva Gevuha, where the Leg Gemara is 11 years old. And he doesn't know how to stop. He's thirsty. And he found in his neighborhood 2 boys, young boys, that later on became his colleagues, והיו תלמידי חכמים עצומים שהרביצו תורה בישראל. One of them, we all had the zechut to have him in our community, Hakham Baruch ben Hayim. They were 12, 13 years old, and I will mention sure that you don't know. Knis Hakham Hayim, Slat Hakham Hayim. Slat Hakham Hayim, this was in Bet Knesset Maskil El Dal, in Bet Israel. They call it Slat Hakham Hayim because the Gabbai was the father of Hakham Baruch, Hakham Hayim Mizrahi. And in the mikveh in Bet Israel, on top there's a shtibrach. They used to sit there every night and learn almost the whole night. The whole night they're learning. 4 o'clock they have to go to sleep. Hakham Baruch leaves a little bit early, his father was tough. Hakham Baruch, Hakham Obadya sneak in, 4 o'clock at night. 7, that's it, they have to go to the yeshiva. And he used to take a nap in the middle of the class. And the rabbi used to get very angry at him. And they decided to throw him out of the yeshiva Torah Yosef. And every time, what is this? And then they threw him out of the yeshiva. And his mentor, I can say, Hakham Ephraim HaKohen Zilcha, was the student of Rabbi Yosef Hayim, that he supported him in the hard time when the Iraqi people, the Iraqi community in Yerushalayim was fighting Hakham Obadya because he went against the Psakim of Morenu Hakham. Small people, small-minded people. And he came to the yeshiva. He asked him, what are you doing in the store of your father, grocery store? He said, they threw me out of the yeshiva. I don't know why. אמר לו, because I sit with Hakham, with Baruch Ben Hayy, Baruch Mizrahi, and we learn, and I stay another hour, and I get tired sometime, I take a nap, I doze off a little bit. He took him in his hand, and he brought him to Yeshivat Porat Yosef. And he told his rabbi, I don't want to mention his name, you don't touch this boy. You have a problem, come to me. This is going to be Gedol Ador Abba. By the way, it's important to know that Rabbi Ephraim Kohen Alav Shalom, and the rabbi told me the story one-on-one. He told me the story. Hakham Obadya was born the 12th day of Tishrei. The 12th day of Hishvan, Niftar, the son of Morenu Yosef Hayim, Arab Gaon and Mekubal Hakham Yaakov Hayim. And the entire city went to the funeral. After the burial of Hakham Yaakov Hayim, Hakham Obadya, Ben Kaparat Mishkavo, father, got up and said, Morai ורבותיי, יש לי פדיון הבן. עכשיו אני הולך לפתור את בני. Everybody is invited. And hundreds and thousands of people came to the street. They didn't hear even the pidyon just being there. And Rabbi Ephraim הכהן פדה אותו ביום פטירתו של רבי יעקב חיים. ובא השמש וזרח השמש. But there is something that I want you to say it here, because people don't mention it because they don't know history. There was an Abed Din in Cairo that some of you remember and heard the name, Hacham Yehuda Maslaton. It was Abed Din in Cairo. היה חכם גדול וחכם חשוב מאוד. He passed away, 45, 46, he passed away. And the rabbinate in Cairo they were looking for Abed Din to run the whole, to manage the whole Abed Din. You need the Abed Din, Hashuv, Baki. They didn't have nobody in Egypt. So they called Hakham Obadya Yosef, the founder of Ahaba that we hear today is because of Hakham Obadya. He is the founder and the visionary, and we are due to him, to his work. So he was a layman, כאילו, but he was a bit Hakham Gadol. So he doesn't want to get involved in the rabbinate. He used to live, Migi'a Kapav. He works, that's it. He supports himself. אמרו לו, do us a favor. You're knowledgeable enough. Take a train to Eretz Israel. Go find a Hacham, one or two, to come to be in Betin. Sure enough, Hacham Haron Alav Shalom went to Eretz Israel and went straight to his rabbi, Hacham Ezratiyeh. The rabbi of Hakham Obadya, Alav Shalom, that he learned with him only 1 year, was the Hacham of Hakham Haron for 5 years in Cairo. Hakham Haron was really the real close student of Rabbi Ezratiyeh. He knew him better than everybody else. His dad told him, you know, I'm messenger of the chief rabbinate of Egypt, we have to pick up Abed Din. אמר לו חכם עזרא, יש לי שניים מצוינים, excellent. אחד קוראים לו חכם בן ציון שאול, והשני, חכם מורנו הרב עליו השלום, חכם עובדיה. אמר לו, מי אני אקח? אמר לו, תיקח את חכם עובדיה. אמר לו, זה כולו הלכה. והוא עתיד להיות גדול הדור הבא. And you're going to benefit a lot from him. אמר לו, but I need also somebody to be in charge of my advanced class in Ahava Ahva at night. אמר לו, he's the one, don't worry, he's the one. It took some time. After a year and a half was the time of the war, 1947. And Hakham Obadya didn't want to go to Egypt, it was scary. Hakham Obadya go. And he went to Egypt. And he did an unbelievable work, first of all, in teaching. Not only in Ahava, when he came to Egypt, there are other shuls. Midrash Rashbi, in Harat al-Yehud, they have the Knesset, Midrash Rashbi, and Shimon Bar Yochai. Midrash Keter Torah, Knis Hanan. Every Shabbat afternoon he used to give there, Knesset Eitz Hayim, Knis Hanan. And then Shabbat Sha'urim, Kol Shabbat, Derasha. And this was a side work. And by the way, we had somebody in this community, if you remember him, Levi, Dino Levi, used to say Hazak Baruch, remember him? He was a student in high school. The first Hakham Obadya, they have to justify the 60 gneh. He used to get a very good salary, 60 gneh. Even manager of a bank used to get 60 gneh. So he has to work. So they gave him an obligation to teach in the Jewish high school. So I asked the rabbi, what you taught? Mishnayot. But used to give him such a hard time. And Levi learned from him Mishnayot. But after 3 years, due to impossible conditions, with some responsibilities in the rabbinate, and then time, in the old communities, especially in modern communities, the people that had the authority and the say, most of them were not that connected to halakha. They were proud Jews, but they were not understanding the importance of halakha. כל אחד קוראים לו חכם, כל אחד שוחט, it was a big problem. The rabbi couldn't fix the situation and he left Egypt. He left Egypt and came to Eretz Israel after living in a beautiful area, having khadama, 1 or 2, having great salary. He gave up on everything. And the rabbi told me, but you had money. You didn't save money? And by the way, before I left Egypt, for 6 months, he was only teaching in Ahava. After he resigned from the rabbinate, Yizacher LaTorah Gabbai Aliyemah, that passed just 3 months before Hakham Obadya. Hakham Obadya loved them. I arranged a meeting between them before, maybe 7-8 months ago. They have it in a video. They told me they're going to send it to me. Hakham Shabbatai told me I didn't get it yet. So an unbelievable meeting. The rabbi loved him. And he told the rabbi, don't go back to Eretz Israel. Stay with us and teach Torah all day and answer questions. But how are you going to pay me? We're going to pay you. And David Agani Alav Shalom told me that he used to give him every month 60 gneh. 60 Egyptian lira. You know what I'm talking about? When everything was done, all people were only volunteer. All the rabbis taught for no money. Besides Hakham Yosef Pinto. The rest of them, they were all merchants and teaching Torah. This was the way. I don't know how you did it. I used to go every day, like you say, 5th Avenue, okay? Hamzawi, all those big merchants, and he used to collect, gneh by gneh, dollar by dollar, Egyptian dollars, and every first day of the month he used to give him 60 gneh. After 6 months, I cannot take it anymore. I see you struggling, winter, summer, going, collecting. Just let me go. Let me go. Recently, when I visited Israel in the Shiv'ah of our Rabbi, Alav Shalom Alen Kafarat Mishkabo, I went one visit to a childhood friend, very close to me, that always I visit him, very dear to me, the son of David Agami. They call him Sabato today. And his mother, which the daughter of Hakham Obadya, Marcel, the first time I heard it from her, she told me, Shimon, the first time and the last time that I saw my father crying like a baby with my husband Hakham David, it was one time in my life. It's the day that Hakham Obadya left Egypt. They were sitting in the living room and crying like babies. Like babies. I never saw such a scene. And then, Rabotai Hakham Obadya grew Mehail, but the beginning was very hard. And he was abused many times. I had hard moments with him that I heard him broken. But he said, it's not going to stop me. It's going to stop my learning. I'm going to continue. I told him, Hakham, I saw in Sefer Tehillah David, should it be David Sasson, David Sasson, Shanduch, Mordechai David Sasson, Sefer Musar, that they reprinted it, and in the end, there is 1 or 2 pages of Hiddushim. Okay, Likutei Hiddushim, no printing on the old book. שכתב אותם Hakham Yaakov Dweck. This Hakham Yaakov Dweck was the partner of Hakham Harun Shweka when they opened Ahaba in Cairo in 1928. And he made Aliyah early. And he had a zechut to see Arav Kafahayim, Sofer. He was Meshamesh Oto, and he told me some stories about him. היה לו זכות לראות את הרב שאול דוויק הכהן, הרב השדה, ואמר לי מעשיות ממנו. And he writes a nice חידוש. הוא אומר, חכם שאול דוויק הכהן שואל, למה אומרים דור לדור לשבח מעשיך? דור לדור. תגיד, דור, every door. מה זה דור לדור? זאת אומרת, the first door cannot appreciate your action. Has to go through another generation to look back and appreciate. אמר לו חכם, I promise you, I'm this little one, I'm telling you, the Chokhmah in your books, it's unparalleled. But people don't see it. They don't read it. They see mountains of words. They don't have the patience. They want to see shtickle Rambam, right? They don't understand the work that you do. But later on, the next generation, they will appreciate more. In his funeral and after, when I saw all these people that abused him, coming barefoot to his grave and taking 10 people to ask him Mehillah, I didn't know it's going to happen so fast. So fast. And we're not done yet. Rabotai, he created antagonism because he was looking for the truth and saying the truth the way it is. And people didn't understand him. He spoke over sometime Ashkenazim. You know, that the rabbi is the first one, or the first one that I saw, that don't have anything to do with Ashkenazim, Moroccan, Parsi. He doesn't care. As long as it's Talmid Chacham, Atara leRosho. All his first students were Persian people in Yerushalayim. Parsim, Afghanim, كلهم أناشim pshutim, hard-working, مسكينين, طياحين, حياتين. These people say, Persian, אין להם תלמידי חכמים. Rabbi said, מה? למה? הם טובים מאוד, יהודים כמוני. And he used to teach them Torah day and night. והיום זכו כל ביניהם ובני ביניהם תלמידי חכמים גדולים. מה זה Persian, Ashkenazim, Moroccan? Such a thing at all. It was his way to express some time of weird minhagim or humron, so he said it. אבל לא היה לו עדות. He was close to all גדולי רבני אשכנזים בירושלים. הגאון מצ'בי, והגאון מטפליק, צבי פסח פרנק, and others, הרב שמואל רוזובסקי, and אשכנזים, רבי מצל ז'ולטי, was very good friend of him. He דווקא suffered from the ספרדים, not from the אשכנזים. And why? Because the rabbi combined a very important shita. The Sfaradim in Torah Yosef used to learn very slow. מעיינים, כל הזמן מעיינים. גמרא, ראשית, ספות, מהרשעה, מהראשית, מעיינים, משנה למלך, פותחים, כל מיני חילוקים, קושיות. The rabbi thought it's a waste of time. If it's not a natural question that you ask, don't create artificial questions. You have to learn straight. And up to your capacity today to understand and then grow with your understanding. Definitely in the beginning, you have to learn all the Farashim to be ma'ayin for 2, 3, 4 years for sure, to learn how to manage with the Talmud. But the moment that you got the system and you know how to do it, you have to learn straight. I asked one the rabbi, when you finish the Shas the first time, I know that we're going to have those stories now. We're going to tell you he knew the Shas when he was 8 years old, and he created the golem when he was 9 years old. It was a sheker b'chazar. The rabbi hated stories. אמר לי, when I was 19, כשהייתי בן 19, סיימתי את הש"ס. ככה הוא אמר לי. אבל נפש עמלה לו. התורה was his best friend. The Torah. And then we finished Tehillim, and not Tehillim, there was Sha'anan Abba, no, there was Shavuot. And then the Adar Abba, he doesn't have the Adar Abba for an hour and a half, מחלקים אותה, everybody 5 pages, וגמרנו. We finished half an hour before Shahrit, before dawn, before Shahrat al-Shahar. Everybody open a book. I open the Gemara, then he opened the Gemara, we had 20 people. I had a question, I went to him, he said, another sugiyah. I show him a question that I have a duke I want to make, Tosfot, Rashid. It's amazing, he didn't read it. He didn't read the Gemara. Gradually, when somebody comes with me with a question about Tosfot, I have to read the Gemara just to remind him. Right away, in a second, he flipped everything the other way and he showed me what it means that you can believe in a second, like it was in the sugiyah that I was learning, and he learned it in another book. It was very fast. Genius. And yet, he didn't choose only to be with the elite, with the great Hachamim, with the great people. He knew how to relate to great people, to kings, to prime ministers, to ambassadors. I sat with him once with the ambassador of Egypt. איזה royalty, איזה כבוד, איזה קידוש השם. I was sitting there because we had a few things to ask him to do. And he knew how to sit down with the simplest guy on earth. Simplest guy on earth. He knew how to relate to simple people. When I was 14, 15 years old and I went to his classes, it's not like the last year classes in the Lavian. When he saw that too many people listened to his shaorim, he lowered the level. He couldn't, because you know people, 40, 50,000 listening to this video, they're not going to understand what I'm saying, but I'm talking 20, 25, 27 years ago. It was fire. Regular Shulchan Aruch, you read the whole Siman and then you start. Bet Yosef, Asher Meshim, Makshir, Rabbi Akiva, Igel, Akol Kach, the most difficult sugiyot, B'Isur Ve'eter, B'Sfekot, he used to simplify it. Even the simple guy in the shul can understand it. זה המעלה שלו. וירד משה מן ההר אל העם. ואהבת ישראל, you heard a lot about it. And this community owes him a lot. I'm not going to go into details, but many Piskei Halachot that was controversial and is one not easy to decide. He's the one that knew how to encourage, and everyone, no matter what, always he gave a feedback, always encouraged. He never was, even though we made mistakes, I'll give you just a small example. I was Hazan for him for many years, and I used to say, as I used from my childhood, in Tfilat Arabit, "Ve'ahavadcha ve'chemlatecha lo tasur menu la'amem," he used to say ve'chemlatecha too. And I continue to say it. One day I'm learning in a certain book, I see a comment that it's inappropriate to say ve'chemlatecha. The language of the beracha showed that it's a mistake. Why? Because "Ahavadcha ve'chemlatecha" is plural. אז צריך להגיד, לא יסורו ממנו לעולמים. או באהבתך לא תסור. באהבתך וחמלתך לא יסור ממנו. לא תסור. If זה לא תסור, it's only singular. אז אמר וחמלתך, it's an additional thing that the Hazanim added. We shouldn't say it. I read it. Shabbat, I'm walking with them home, I asked him. הוא אומר לי, זה נכון. You should not say לחמלתך. זה לא מדויק. ואהבתך לא תסור, לא צריך לחמלתך. אין איזה נוסח הרמב"ם, זה בקרב שונה במסע, הוסיפו את זה החזנים. So one year I'm praying here every night, לחמלתך, לחמלתך. Why you don't correct me? Well, I'm going to embarrass you in front of everybody. So after, who next? And the rabbi hated stories around him, and Kabbalah, and Halomot, he hated it. I personally once saw him with my own eyes, standing by him, side by side, saying Selihot. So we have this wood holder, okay, with the siddur. And he's Hazan, and I'm Somech, Selihot. Arab Rosh Hashanah. I see under, every time he's pulling a pamphlet and put it back. I'm looking, I see, it's Kavanot HaRashash LeSelichot. Oh, now I have something good. You know, it's a nice, איך קוראים את זה פה? Good news, איך אומרים? Scoop, כן. Hakham Obadya with Siddur HaRashash, that's it, could be, I revealed something great. So after walking, I saw a nice moment, I asked him, Rabbi, מה לכבודו היה מתחת? אבל לו, מה אכפת לך? אמרתי לו, I saw סידור הרשש. אומר לי, don't make wave, it's nothing, I just was checking the גרסאות. To see the change of the גרסאות between the סידור והירא and our גרסאות. That's it, nothing else. This is what he said, I have to accept it, but how to believe? When he was on his way to Egypt, and I'm the only one that verified it with him, so I tell you a real story how great he was when he was 24. There was great מכוון סידור הרשש של ירושלים. כל מעשיו על פי הקבלה. כוונות is in heaven all the time. By the way, he's a great man. One time it's good to speak about him. He never took a penny for his Torah. When he learned his Kabbalah, he was chief accountant of one of the richest guys in Baghdad, Menachem Daniel. This is how he make his living. Never took a penny from nobody. In Yerushalayim, he was shamash, ובית כנסת taking money as a shamash. Hakham Salman Musafi Alav Shalom, that I had the merit to know him and to sit him and to kiss his hand. And I heard There was a story in Yerushalayim that before, in 1947, Hakham Salman said, there's only one in this generation that I can transfer to him the kavanot of Arashas, the way that I learned it from Hakham Shaul Dweka Kohen. Nobody else. פה היה חכם יעקב קסין, and he became here, ולא מכבד. And Yerushalayim, I have to, the only one is Hakham Obadya, 24 years old. They were מקובלים, מכבד, only him. And he used to chase after him in the street. Please, just give me 3-4 months, I'll teach you all the kavanot. Amar, I have no time, I have to go to Egypt. I don't think this was the real reason, but this is what he told them. One Erev Shabbat, I'm walking with the rabbi at home after tefillah, and I asked the rabbi, tell me this is a true story, it's a real story, Be'emet, Hakham Salman, because it's a lot of meaning to it. It means that Hakham Salman knows that he knows a lot, that he's just in the stage of teaching the kavanot. Amar li, זה נכון. That's it, this is the end of the story, יאללה, נמשיך לדברים אחרים. לא צריך לדבר. He never liked people to think that it's a קבלה, וחלומות, וברכות, everything, and he had the simple נפלאות. And I tell you, Rabotai, we're left with no one story about Harambam. Or Maaseh Nisim. We have one story that the Egyptian people know, and they show the greatness of Harambam as a doctor. That one lady came to him, and her husband was sick, and she brought him, and she came after 2 days, and Harambam wrote her on a piece of paper. He gave it to the Shamash. I couldn't find a cure to him. And he said it in Arabic. ما ألفت له دواء. I couldn't compose a medicine for him. She understood ma in Arabic could be long and could be ma, water. Left, a left could be to compose, or a left could be create a lift. هنخوف من اللف بالعربي. Turnip. As the water of boiling turnip, this would be the medicine. ما ألفت له دواء. And she did it, and he was cured. This is the mistake of Harambam. This is a nice story. I don't know if it's a real story. It's a myth. No real stories about Harambam. There's no one story about the reef. Even Morenu Hakham Yosef, I don't hear. There are no stories of Nisim and Niflaot. Hagar Hida, 1 or 2, 3 stories. Thanks to the Hasidim that gave us some stories about the behind bin Attar. We don't have so many stories. What left? The Hibur Harambam, Mishneh Torah Harambam, tens of thousands now sitting down and learning Harambam. Every shiur is involved in Harambam. Every posek learns Harambam. Every beginner starts to learn, he learns Harambam. Every bar tshuva today in Chod De'or. This is what left from Harambam. Mara Shulchan Aruch, any stories? No stories. Bet Yosef Shulchan Aruch. I walk down the street of Ocean Parkway, I see Abrech with books, and he's telling me, Hakham, can you tell me stories about Hakham Obadya? I told him, what? 93 years old, he learned for 80 years, more than 80 years, and now we want all these 12 years to tell you stories? The story is here, in his books. Go to the Bet Midrash, despite of everybody give you a dirty look, and open your Be'ahom and start from Halek Aleph. Because the B'tzalel Shulti taught Hakham Obadya Tshuva in Halek Gimel about Hirut Kedibut Dami. Arab Amani, the rabbi told me the story, I learned the Tshuva Hirut Kedibut Dami. I'm flying for a week. When you're flying for a week, I tell you what Hakham B'tzalel Shulti told me. When he got to Tshuva, אמר לי, רב עובדיה, עשית מזה תשובה או שתיים? ובנות תשובה can make a full book. His first 5 volumes of the Be'ahom is only for the short way of writing and concentrated, and the depth, it's unparalleled. This is what we have to do today. Sit down, the simple guy that don't have such a strong background, there's an easy Sfarim, Hakham Obadya, you cannot understand the bottom, you cannot understand the top. Establish Shorim in Torah Haram, understand what he tried to do to this generation. And as we have the era of Harif, the era of the Geonim, the era of the Rabbanan Sevorae, and before that the Amoraim, and the era of the Tanaim, and then the poskim, we had this zchut in our times to live in the era of Morenu Hakham Obadya Yosef. You understand it? We are loved by Hashem. Our generation is loved by Hashem. If Hashem gave us such a great man to enlighten our life, it's a sign that we are loved. Our generation is important in the eyes of Borei Olam. Otherwise, he wouldn't keep this neshama so long. יש לו נשמה גבוהה מספר הגאונים. Was waiting for our generation to lead us. We're important people. We love by Hashem. Hashem wants us to send such a great man. And when we saw, when he was 17, 18, 90, other people like Hakham Ezatiyeh, and Hakham Baruch, and Hakham Menzion, and Hakham Eliyahu Lopez, and Hakham Yaakov Ades, and Hakham Aron Shweka, all those saw it when he was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And they were not wrong. And Baruch Hashem, that is in lifetime, we know how to appreciate her. And we have a zechut as Ahaba, that one of our teachers, and we benefit from his Torah day in, day out, as you all know. כל יום מחנה תפילה בשבת, ונמשיך לעסוק בתורתו, because this is the legacy, this is the only thing that left. And after all these books and the stories, what will be left for our grandchildren to learn is his books. ויהי רצון שזכותו תגן בעד כל הקהל הקדוש הזה, ובעד כל ישראל, ובעד כל השארית הנשארה, ונזכה לגאולה שלמה, ולתחיית המתים, ולהרמת קרנם של ישראל, ובפרט הרמת קרן התורה. My last visit with the rabbi was he was crying about בני הישיבות, שהתורה תימשך ותגדל ותרבה, ונזכה כולנו במהרה בימינו לגאולה שלמה, אמן. הרב בעצם הסיפור יגדיל תורה ויגדיל גדל וגדל שמחה. גם את הקודם לבכותיו יסמך וקרב יקרב משכם. חי חרוב במקום חי לחומת ישראל בעד הרב המרכרים, אמן.